The young man was kneeling before his boss. He couldn't take it anymore. Lately, he had noticed that he was holding his gaze on his boss much longer and watching him more. Passion? Interest? No, it's something more. And the further along it was, the harder it was to hide it. The manager's face, always stony, softened for a moment. He replied that he had known about something like this since the first meeting, when a subordinate pointed a gun at him. The girl woke up in a hospital bed. She couldn't understand how she ended up there. Everything around her seemed incomprehensible and strange. The stranger thought she was reading too much. The events of the novel she had been reading lately began to come to her in her dreams. It often seemed as if all the events described in the work were beginning to happen in the real world. The pain in her arm brought her back to her senses. The poor thing realized that she had fallen asleep at home last night, and the injured arm and the vasofix in her arm were no less surprising. Suddenly, guards burst into the room. They were armed, and from the way the men reacted, they were assigned to protect the girl from danger and keep her calm. The poor girl covered herself with a pillow, believing that such protection would save her from a bullet from a pistol. The guards asked her to calm down, but the girl still believed that they had come for her. The stranger tried to remember the events of the previous evening. She had had a few drinks with friends to celebrate the completion of a difficult task. After that, not a single detail came to mind. Finally, the girl realized that she shouldn't panic. She decided that she needed to gather her thoughts and come to terms with what was happening. Outside the windows of the ward, she could hear seagulls in the surf, the sound of waves. That was not the only thing that was surprising. The girl began to guess that she was on an island. But even more surprising was her own reflection in the window. It was not her real self. The guard asked if everything was okay with Miss Yan. Well, the patient was surprised. That was the name of the main character in the novel she admired. It meant the boss's husband. The puzzle began to gradually come together into a single picture. The security guard, the cottage on the island, and the dark-haired girl. John Bell asked if she was not in Baekjeon by any chance. The men were surprised. The question seemed strange to her. The guards attributed it to the lady's weak condition. And for the girl herself, everything became clear. She quickly walked past them. No one dared to stand in her way. After all, such behavior with John could have ended fatally for them. The girl decided to find the man's room. One of the guards did guess where the girl was going. He shared his guess with his friend, but he didn't think so. He thought about what John Bell didn't know the house that well. The girl stood in front of a tall door. She expected that behind it would be the room she had read so much about in the novel. It made her happy and sad at the same time. Her heart beat faster and faster. Everything indicated that this was not a dream, but reality. Before John Bell's task now was to figure out for herself what was really happening. If a black-haired young man was sitting in the room now, then everything was correct. The guards apologized for not stopping the girl. The owner of the estate dismissed the guards and assured them that everything was fine. He himself had wanted to talk to her for a long time, so he found a moment. The girl stood before the handsome man. His beauty so struck her that Jan remained silent, not daring to say a word to him. Even the realization that she had found herself in a novel did not disturb her. Bayek Havan put a gun to the girl's forehead. He asked how she knew about this place. Jan realized that she had acted rashly. After all, only the owner and those close to him could know about this secret place. The novel, The Boss Man, was actually an action-packed story. Murder and violence were on every page of this work, but in the course of the story, two bitter enemies fall in love with each other. One of them is Baek Ha-out. At first glance, the young man appeared to be the manager of an ordinary company, but in fact, under his cover, a serious company was operating, dealing in murders, drugs, and other illegal activities. Another character, Yu Gyum, is the son of the head of a competitor's company, which everyone called Utopia. He was an illegitimate son, so he didn't even dare to think about inheritance and his participation in the fate of the management. The head of security asked his subordinates to forgive him. Peck warned that it was worth watching the girl more closely, because next time there would be serious consequences for anyone who did not look after her. John was alone contemplating her situation. In fact, it wasn't as good as it might seem at first glance. After all, she was the half-sister of the main character, Peck. But there was one caveat. After the death of their parents, the girl became obsessed with her brother. Her feelings for him flared up from a spark that had been smoldering inside her and had not been allowed to ignite to its full potential. From the very beginning, the main character is kidnapped by Baek Han's enemy. He holds her captive for a long time. Meanwhile, the girl thinks about how to win her brother's heart and become his lover. To save her, Baek Ha he personally went to the very heart of the enemy corporation and dealt with the enemies with his own hands. This is how the main meeting of the entire work happened and how love was born. Yu fell in love with his rival and bitter enemy at first sight, and the kidnapping of Wyon became a plot move that was supposed to contribute to the meeting of the main characters. The girl's further fate was not interesting. Yeon died at the hands of Yu Hem because he was jealous of her and considered her an obstacle in his path. However, there was an assumption that it was Baek who instigated him to kill his sister. After all, she simply tired of his intrigues. The current Yeon simply couldn't let this happen. She wasn't satisfied with simply being a bridge between the two. There was a possibility that the two hadn't met yet. Unlike the original, this time the meeting was delayed. The two simply didn't have a chance to see each other as Yeon was under guard, so it's worth avoiding kidnapping. But in the original, Yu Ham was also supposed to die. The ending of the novel was not happy for anyone, so it is in her power to change the entire course of events and save her life and her beloved hero. To do this, she decided to come up with a cunning plan. There was nothing on the table to write on. John looked for writing utensils and found a gun. The further plan formed in her head by itself. She was shooting at a shooting range. The target remained intact, and the girl simply could not believe that she was so clumsy, and it was difficult for her to learn how to handle a weapon. Kidnapping in this way is inevitable. There was a high probability that the girl would simply take advantage of the order of the previous head of the Baekjeon Corporation, which was about protecting the girl until she turned 24. There was no need to rely entirely on this. After all, the girl was not that important to Pekhavan. She was even a problem for him to some extent. So would he protect her? Confident footsteps were heard in the corridor. The guards and servants froze in place, because the boss himself had visited the house this time. He ordered everyone to leave the room for an hour and not to disturb him. Joan hid behind the curtain. She was so afraid that she couldn't think of anything better. The young man was searching for something in his pocket. Finally, he succeeded. He took out a gun. Peck was more and more surprised. The next moment, a shot rang out. The target was hit 100%. The target stood with a hole in the part that was supposed to serve as the head. The girl watched in surprise. The next shots hit the target. John Bell found her in the hiding place. He guessed that the girl had long been looking for an excuse to attract his attention. Now her fear made an impression on him. The young man guessed about her feelings. The girl was afraid to even imagine what such a prominent warrior and killer of the organization could do to her if he suspected her of involvement in something dangerous for him. It was worth acting decisively. Jan grabbed Peck by the shoulder and told him to listen carefully. The girl told her that she no longer loved him and that there was no need to think of any extraordinary reasons for her sister to pursue him. Next came the announcement that at the end of the week, John would be leaving the estate and starting his own life, separate from the boy. So it was up to him to organize a farewell party. Peck looked at her in surprise. He couldn't believe what he had heard, and Jan said that she expected a grand farewell party from him. The girl must escape from this house as soon as possible. When the girl was left alone, fear overcame her. It was then that she began to realize that she was taking a huge risk. After all, her brother, on his nerves, could simply shoot her head off and leave. Her head spun. Everything around her seemed to be plunged into a strange fog. She was falling, losing consciousness. Someone grabbed her by the waist and held her tightly. Voices could be heard all around. They were talking about her, about how the landlady had become unwell. The blond boy asked his brother John Bell, wondered why he had done this to his sister again. After all, he knew perfectly well how she reacted and how weak her nervous system was. The boys were arguing. Peck asked the man why he had come to the hospital. The man replied that he was worried about the girl's condition, and he knew that his brother would not help her just like that. This boy's name was Du. Shivai. He leaned over to the girl and quietly told her that she had become even less beautiful. Peck ordered her to leave the room and not come near her again. Finally, Du lingered near the girl and quietly told her that if she decided to run away, she should definitely tell him and he would definitely help. But no one else should know about his proposal. John Bell thought about the young man. He was given little space in the novel. All that is known is that the Doe family was subordinate to Baek Jong. And looking at how the boys talked, they were in a close relationship. The girl thought about how much she could trust and believe the young man's words. The brother asked why she had decided to leave the organization. The sister replied that she was not very involved in it, so she decided to leave. Peck didn't believe her. He thought it was just another reason to draw attention to himself, to make the young man jealous, to ask her to stay. But he definitely wasn't going to do that, at least not now. The only thing the girl was thinking about now was the young man's cold hand, with which he was touching her. And right now, it gave her a certain pleasure. She couldn't think about anything else. She was worried and nervous. The farewell day was to take place on a cruise ship. John Bell felt as if she had signed her own death warrant with her actions. She tried to distract herself from it, but she couldn't. The servants were simply delighted with their mistress's appearance. The girl always dressed provocatively to attract the eyes of all the guests, including Baek John himself. A security guard came in and informed her that the boss was expecting the lady. The girl was worried that her behavior had changed a lot compared to the original heroine. But now it was time to act decisively. Today, there was no room for error. After all, if someone suspected her of something, they wouldn't let her go under the pretext of a threat to the organization. But surviving in this crazy place was her main task for now. Her brother offered to take her to the main hall. However, Yeon refused. She said that she was not going to go with him. She would be taken by another guy, Doshi, Vi. She had a few questions for him about the escape. The young man said he couldn't let this happen. She was his sister, and he couldn't just let her go with a stranger. However, the girl knew the reasons. She was part of the organization, and she had no right. Finally, Peck allowed his sister to go where she thought fit. One of the guards was to follow her so that nothing would threaten the young lady. A sense of ownership prevailed over reason for the moment. John Bell decided not to react to various provocations from her stepbrother. She wondered what her heroine had found in this boy, but it was worth waiting for the end of the party. In the office, the head of security was talking to Baek Ho. The man shared his thoughts about the act of his boss, who had never given any girl the kind of attention he had given his sister. 12 years ago, they first met. Her mother died of an illness, and her father met and eventually married another woman. Her stepmother had a daughter who looked exactly like her. When Peck saw his father in the company of his new family, he was filled with anger. He still couldn't accept that his father had betrayed his mother's memory, and so quickly found a replacement for her and forgotten about her. Although the little sister was not to blame for anything, he did not feel anything positive towards her either. But the stepmother loved both children until she died too. Then the children were left alone. Then John Bell couldn't hold back. She wasn't going to hold back any longer. The girl loudly declared that she was going to do everything in her power to make the young man stay with her and love her deeply and tenderly. From the moment of that conversation, when love was not the topic and the girl was driven by a manic obsession, John began to behave defiantly and tried to provoke him, make him jealous and angry. The girl succeeded in her plan. She attracted the attention of her brother with her strange behavior. He ordered the guard to assign one of the prudent and intelligent agents to her so that they would carefully watch John. The young man arrived just in time when his sister thought she was alone. He suggested that she accept his invitation. John could not recall anything like it from the story she had read. The girl saw a huge number of guests. She was surprised by how pompous the party her brother had organized and how he managed to do it in such a short time. His abilities were impressive. The servant asked the master to leave for a short time and leave Lady Yan alone. The girl was grateful for such a chance. After all, the sooner the party was over, the sooner she would get out of here. The sister is amazed at how popular her little brother is. Peck was the center of attention. Everyone was interested in him. The girls just didn't let him pass. Yan was amazed because the novel had no such scale. A stranger approached her. The guest said that she was glad to meet her and was very surprised by the girl's intention to leave Peck's house. In it, one could always feel free and protected. John was surprised by this acquaintance. The girl's behavior indicated that they had known each other for a long time. In the end, the guest answered the question herself. She said that a lot of time had passed since the last meeting, but she didn't want to remember her because that time Yon had pulled out a large lock of her hair. The stranger noticed her reaction and asked what she intended to do. Was she going to try to fight her again? Yon understood the motives of this girl. She, like many other girls, wanted to get Baekho's attention, but she would not succeed. The main character's sister felt something like jealousy and was not going to give in. It was impossible to attract the attention of the guests and cause a scandal right at the party. So, Hwayeon prudently left the girl's company, leaving her no chance to further escalate the conflict. The girl was lost in thought and didn't notice when she bumped into a waiter who had spilled a glass of wine. A security guard ran up to her. He saw that it wasn't an accident, but a masked servant had provoked the hostess. The lady immediately understood who was in front of her. The young man's appearance left no doubt. It was the second main character. His name was Yu Hem, and the latter's smile did not promise anything good. The girl analyzed the situation. The presence of this guest definitely couldn't be accidental. After all, there was no chance of getting on the liner, on which the party was taking place. So Yu Hem definitely received an invitation. In that case, it might have seemed like a delusion. After all, they were bitter enemies with her brother. This simply couldn't have happened just like that. This could have been Baekho's special plan to set a trap. Yeon understood that she couldn't show her emotions. She had no right to betray Yu Hem because he wasn't personally acquainted with the event's security, so she should continue to play the role and not arouse his suspicions. The security guard stays in the hall to deal with the strange lady who attacked the hostess. Meanwhile, Yeon walks down the corridor with Yu Gyeong. The girl realizes that the silence is alarming the guest. She asked him if he belonged to her brother's organization. He didn't want to give a direct answer, instead warning that you don't just get there. And becoming a member is a great achievement. The girl is left alone. She stands on the balcony and looks intently at the sky. She would be comfortable in this world if she had more time to explore and figure things out for herself. But there is not enough time. Someone's hands fall on her shoulders. Yeon is frightened, suspecting the worst that could happen to her in the absence of security or any of the guests. The stranger turned out to be Yu Gen. He was startled by her silence. The young man said that he found the girl's behavior strange. He didn't mean to scare her. He just checked to see if she was okay. She replied that everything was fine and that she should return to her guests. Suddenly, the servant says that he can immediately tell when a person is lying or telling the truth. Yu Geum emphasizes that he is actually very good at lying. Yan knew these words from the main plot. Suddenly, it seemed to her that things were going wrong. Everything that was supposed to happen between her brother and Eugen was now happening between her and the main character. This worried the girl and made her think. Yeon covered her mouth with her hand. She didn't intend to listen to the young man any further. However, it so happened that she didn't intend to reveal his identity. Eugen himself took off his mask to show his true face. The girl broke free from the guest's arms. She was about to run away. Eugen asked how she knew who he was. The young man began to suspect that someone working for the enemy had started up in his environment. Yeon was going to take the opportunity to call the security. She didn't manage to reach the door. The girl grabbed a gun and pointed it at Young Gen. He asked her since when did ladies go around armed. The lady was still aiming at her opponent. However, this did not arouse any emotion in him. The girl knew the strange look of the guest. He was as if he were on the edge of an abyss and had no more chances. Yu Gyum was actually the illegitimate son of the head of a powerful organization. No one liked him. His father used him as a tool to solve his business problems. The girl felt sorry for the little one. She often wished, while reading, that everything would work out in the boy's life. Now she said that she recognized him because she had been in love with him for a long time. But this does not change his current position. Yan added that she had wanted to tell him about it for a long time because she considered him the best character and secretly loved him. Now it was worth stalling for time and taking advantage of Yu Gyum's embarrassment. The girl ran away again, taking advantage of the situation. She could not understand why events had turned out so strangely. After all, the meeting was supposed to take place much later and under different circumstances. Suddenly, she realized that there was blood everywhere on the deck. There were bodies lying around. In the center stood her brother. His gaze was stern. Jan guessed that they were the bodies of Yu Hem's followers. The brother ordered the guard to protect John. Bell. He himself will continue to track down the enemy who tried to reach his family during the soiree. For such an act, they must suffer severe punishment. Yu Hem suddenly appeared behind her. He grabbed her by the neck and held her tightly. She had no more strength to resist. Young Bell was confused. She didn't know if she should try to change anything. The girl was driving away the thought that she was to blame for everything that was happening around her. Her brother was now completely calm, and this was after he had managed to defeat his enemies and shed rivers of blood. Yeon guessed that in this situation it was worth acting cunningly. Based on the plot of the novel, one could conclude that Yu Geum always wanted to be simply loved. So the girl, without the slightest shame, announced that she had feelings for him, and now they had the opportunity to run away together and leave the situation as it is at the moment. This surprised both parties. The young man pushed her aside just in time. The bullet flew right past. Baek Ho asked his sister what she was screaming about and if she was feeling okay. Young Belly understood that her brother was really ready to kill her. A group of men jumped onto the deck. They were Yu Hem's men. Guard Baek Ho asked the boss to get out of here. There were too many opponents, and there was a possibility that they would not be able to withstand this attack. So it was worth running away. John Bell didn't know how to handle the situation. She hadn't expected it to turn out this way. She was completely lost after her brother decided to run away and leave her alone. Yu Geum decided everything for her. The young man picked her up and carried her. He emphasized that he would not leave her alone. But the girl realized in time. She could not allow herself to be kidnapped just like that. It was too late to ask for help. Yu Geum, holding the girl in his arms, jumped overboard. There was no chance of escaping from the kidnapping in Yong. Now fate would decide everything for her. John Bell felt as if she were being strangled by a huge snake. No sounds could reach the girl. Pain pierced her entire body. There was no longer any possibility of moving freely and owning her own body. The girl woke up in an unfamiliar room. It was already too much for one day, but she didn't pay attention to it. Everything around her seemed familiar, but she knew that she was here for the first time. The heroine understood that she was inside the Utopia office, but she shouldn't have stayed there. She immediately began to think about how to get out of this place and save herself. The girl looked around carefully. There was nothing around except bookshelves. She thought that the secret must be like what is often shown in spy movies. That is, she must find a secret exit. A voice came from behind her. It was Yu Hem. He guessed what his captive was doing and said that in reality, everything was not as banal as she thought. He also said that there was no way to open the door from the inside. The girl realized that she should be very careful, at least until she came up with a way to escape from this place. After all, despite his interest in her, the young man could easily get rid of Jan. The captive thought that the only option to escape her current situation was to flirt with her captor. In turn, he asked if she didn't wonder why he had done this to her. John Bell asked how the young man was feeling. After all, he had been injured in the very process of trying to stop him from kidnapping the girl. The young man wondered if she really didn't understand that he was a villain. Yu Hem asked her not to try to deceive him because he could see deception and trickery a mile away. The girl replied that it was impossible for her to even think about such a thing. After all, she didn't want to take any risks. Meanwhile, the young man paid no attention to her mental anguish. He asked how it happened that the girl fell in love with him, having only seen him from afar or in a photo. Perhaps he was her type. Jan was surprised. It was difficult for her to interpret the young man's words. After all, she could not understand whether he was speaking seriously or if he was just mocking her again, so the answer should also be ambiguous. The girl had no right to make a mistake. Meanwhile, the boy seemed to be specifically asking her about the reasons for their acquaintance and her desire to stay with him. Moreover, She had no idea where she was. John Bell couldn't reveal her secret. She couldn't tell him that she knew everything about him thanks to the plot of the book, starting from his childhood and ending with his lifestyle at the present moment. If she answers like that, then at best, he simply won't let her out of here. At worst, he'll just get rid of her, and their acquaintance will end permanently and irrevocably. Yuhem questioned. His questions drove the girl into a dead end and gave her no chance to avoid answering them. The young man said that it was strange to see a member of a rival clan on the anniversary of his utopia. Jan remembered some plot details. According to the novel, it was on the anniversary of Utopia that her brother was supposed to attack her. It was on this day that Yugum and Bekho were supposed to meet. And it was on this day that a new love would be born. It was funny, but everything happened exactly as it was supposed to happen. Even if some events changed, everything should go according to the plot and develop. But the young man noticed that the girl was distracted. He asked not to stop, but to talk to him. After all, to him, who had not known since childhood what love and simple love were, a stranger told him about her sympathy for him, just like that, without threats or bribery. Jan was surprised by the naivety of the young man. The girl could not even guess what was happening at that time in her brother's estate. The question of survival overshadowed all her thoughts, and distracted from Baek-ho and Baek-chan's boss in his estate, in a secret room, for almost the third day in a row, punished everyone who was involved in the attack on the liner and the kidnapping of his sister. The victims of his torture were the members of Utopia. His goal was to learn as much as possible about the leader of the enemy side. He gathered information gradually, not hesitating to use the most brutal methods to untie the enemy's tongues. John Bell noticed the young man's wound. She wondered how in such a situation it was possible to talk about something like that without paying attention to the wound on his body. The girl asked if Yugem should take care of himself first. They unexpectedly entered the secret room. There was absolutely no one there, and the girl could not even believe that such a huge, spacious room was hidden next to her. For Yuhem, this seemed like a surprise. However, the girl pretended that it happened by accident, although she had read about the existence of such hidden rooms in Utopia in a novel. John Bell guessed that the young man had deceived her, and he, in turn, paid no attention to this. Instead, he asked to treat the wound, which had begun to remind him of itself with a dull pain and twitching. The girl asked why he didn't go to the hospital. He replied that many people in the city would be happy to hear that Yu Ham had been injured in the shootout. Besides, everyone would know who he was with. Yu Gyum's friend entered the room. Li Chan asked how he could behave like this when everyone around him was nervous about what happened on the liner, and the young man just kept quiet and flirted with the girl. Li Chan decided to get down to business. He said that his father had been waiting for the boy for a long time. Jan guessed what was going on between the two. When Ham captured Utopia, Lee was his most loyal ally. However, the boy asked who this girl was and how she got to their secret hideout. Yugum replied that he had captured her from Baekjong itself. This caused displeasure from his brother and comrade. Yeon decided that she should find an ally. So without hesitation, she greeted Lee and introduced herself. Li Chan looked at her in surprise. He couldn't believe that the sister of their enemy was now in the heart of Utopia. Another main character rushed into the room. Her name was Yu Hua, and she was the heiress of the family and Utopia. She fiercely hated Yu Hem and Baekho, so meeting Yeon did not bode well for her. Unexpectedly for no one, Yugum kissed the guest. She definitely did not expect this, and it was necessary to do so in order to keep the guest's identity a secret. After all, otherwise serious problems could begin. Yu Hua made fun of her stepbrother. After all, he didn't pay attention to her at a time when she was hoping to meet her. The girl became interested in who Yu Hem's companion was, kissing him so passionately. The heiress is not going to talk about everything that is happening anymore. Soon everyone in this room will pay for their arrogance and their naivety. She will get their heads personally. Silence fell among the crowd after Yu Hua left them alone. Yu Hem was about to go to his father, and Lee ordered him to guard the girl and protect her from possible danger. Finally, the young man shocked her. He was about to leave when he told John that it was his first kiss, and judging by her reaction, so was she. She could not deny it, because she did not know how to lie. 3 days passed after this conversation. Yu disappeared and did not show himself. Lee Chan took responsibility for protecting and guarding the girl. She devoted this time to thinking about the kiss. The young man was not happy with this company. He emphasized that the girl felt very comfortable in their captivity. John believed that he was right, because they had become friends. She spoke about this with sarcasm, but what worried her most was that the day of her death was approaching. It was important to prevent the main characters from meeting and feelings from arising between them. In this case, the girl would remain alive. The moment came when Yanbei was left alone. It was her chance to explore the structure of the building and escape from captivity. But everything around the girl was locked, or access to it was limited. The captive's attention was drawn to a huge blank wall. It stood out and caught the eye. As it turned out, all the doors and windows in the house opened with a secret button. Yu came in suddenly. He was covered in blood. The young man emphasized that her efforts were now in vain. He had already warned that Yan would definitely not get out of here on her own, so it was worth giving up vain hopes. The boy asked, how was she treated, and if she was okay? Yan thought that with injuries as serious as his, it would be better to go to the hospital as soon as possible, rather than walking around the house. For herself, the girl decided to play the role of an obedient captive. She reported that she was afraid of Yu Ham's long absence and that he had left her and would never return to her. The boy's behavior changed after such warm words, which he had not heard from strangers for a long time. He expected to be able to see through the deception, but this time there was none. Yan was frank with him. He wanted to hear these words again and again, but the girl interrupted his pleasure. She explained that of course she was waiting for the one on whom her life depended, and in this case she could not live in peace. The boy asked how she had slept in his room and bed. The girl thought that he had indeed come at night, although the servants and Lee assured her that the master had gone far away on serious business and would not be back soon. The boy's tone became cold and angry. He didn't expect that after all his confessions, the girl would treat him like a commodity, who, by the way, was simply helping her survive. This situation was repeated with him often, but Yan immediately guessed the reasons for such a change. The girl decided to simply manipulate the young man in the future, targeting his personal preferences and childhood complexes. Yan emphasized that only together they could survive this hell and continue living. She liked Utopia more than her brother's organization. The girl waited for the young man's reaction. Yuhim was doing the usual things that a clan head should do. However, he couldn't get the conversation with the girl out of his head, which was the reason for her sincerity and openness. The man who acted as his right-hand man was talking to the young man. Although the two were discussing organizational matters, a thought about the captured girl slipped through their minds. The guys also talked about the enemy organization. After all, the future head of Baekjeon was once a confidant of the head of Utopia. It so happened that he separated from his boss and started his own business. Since then, the members of Utopia have harbored hatred for all members of Baekjeon. However, the rivals never took the initiative. They always waited and never showed aggression. At the moment, Utopia had one important trump card. The sister of the head of the organization was being held captive by Yu Hem, so it was possible to start the case using the cover of Wyon Bell. The girl was the opportunity that would allow him to gain the upper hand in the fight. And although she was a unique chance, the young man did not want to use it. He did not want to reduce her to a simple function. Meanwhile, Li Chang spent time with the captive. Surprisingly, they became friends. The girl asked why the young man was sorting through masks for the carnival. He replied that on the day of the founding of Utopia, everyone should wear masks. It was not just a tradition, but a rule that had been established in the community for centuries. So you shouldn't just chat, but rather choose the right mask. John Bell replied that he was already ugly and no one would look at him. Yu Gyum stood behind the girl. He asked to help him with choosing a mask as well. She was surprised by the guy's appearance, and he replied, "Didn't she herself ask him to come more often?" Yu Ham said that before escaping from the liner, he exchanged a few words with the girl's brother. He emphasized that if even one hair falls from his sister's head, he will deal with each member of Utopia personally. John couldn't believe it. He had openly told her that he didn't care about her fate. However, it turned out that his pride might just be hurt, and then he would take revenge on his enemies for his own honor. Yu Gyum thought about the fact that he was still taking advantage of the girl's approval of him. At the moment, Baek Ho was not a threat to him, as new Utopia members and clan members were arriving around him. The captive, meanwhile, understood that she might fall in love with the young man, and warm feelings would interfere with both of them. But this could not be allowed. They talked and talked about it, getting distracted. Since that conversation, the young man had visited the captive every day. They had a good time, playing games and talking about all sorts of things. However, many members of the group did not like this. The assistant pulled him away from the game. He said that it was time to get away from things. Both were upset that they had been interrupted. In a strange way, Yeon and Yu Gyum became closer during this time spent together. Unlike the original plot, the girl did not feel the yoke of captivity. She tried in every way to clarify her true situation, but she was usually treated well and kindly. Perhaps this was the kidnapper's cunning plan. They could gain the girl's trust, then tell her the right things, which would guide her in the future and make her do everything for them. Behind all this could be hidden manipulation and a desire to take advantage of her in the future. Perhaps she will even be released or made to appear to have escaped from captivity. Someone was knocking on the door. Behind them came the voice of a girl or a woman. It was clearly Yu Hua. She couldn't be let in. After all, the girl's curiosity had been bothering Yeon for a long time. Hua must not find out who the captive was. There was no time to think, and the girl put on a mask. In this way, she tried to hide her person. However, it so happened that the guards did not immediately recognize that they were not Yu Hem. Yu Hua stood right in front of the girl. She looked at her carefully, but she couldn't imagine that the girl would contradict her. Yoon didn't want a conflict. She tried her best to hold back. Suddenly, Yu Hua pushed the captive. The girl fell to the ground. It was rude, but Yeon didn't dare say anything in response. She expected what would happen next, but surprisingly, everything stopped. Hwan and her henchmen had killed them all, so it was worth running away and saving your life. Yeon ran to the elevator and was already in it. The security guards were already running after her. The elevator still wouldn't close, and the killers demanded that Yeon stop, otherwise they would shoot her. The girl didn't listen. She went down to the lower floors, and the thought of what to do next was racing in her head. Yu Gyum should not have let her be killed. They needed the girl in order to manipulate Baek Ho at the right moment. The captive remembered that Yu Gyum and his assistant were talking about poker in the basement. So, salvation should be sought there. No matter how crazy Yu Hua is, she will not go against the entire clan. An explosion rang out in the basement. The girl understood that this was not just a coincidence. It was no coincidence that Yu Hua reached the upper floors at a time when hell was raging below from the explosion. Amidst the panic and the crowd of people trying to escape, the girl tried to find Yu Hem and his friend. The head of the organization could not be left to his own devices just like that. Lee Chan grabbed the girl by the hand and asked what she was doing here. Yun in turn asked where Yu Gyum was. After all, she had come here purely to save her boss and guardian. Only John Bell could have known about the young man's fear of fire. In the original plot, there was a similar situation. He found himself in the middle of the fire and lost consciousness, and then Baek Ha saved him. It is, but her brother wasn't here at the moment, so she had to do his job. The fire was getting worse, the smoke was getting thicker, there was no way to find your way around in all the chaos and disorder. Finally, she managed to find Yu Hem. He was lying on the floor, staring silently at the ceiling. His glassy eyes indicated that the young man had suddenly lost consciousness and could no longer cope on his own. The girl took his arm and led him down the corridor. It was time to reach the exit, and there someone would come to their aid. There was still a little left, and Wyon was overcoming herself, breaking her weakness and powerlessness. Finally, they reached the exit. The fresh air and the absence of smoke brought Yu Hem to his senses. The young man did not immediately understand what was happening around him. He could not remember what had happened before he lost consciousness. A wardrobe was falling on them. The heavy antique wardrobe was about to crush them both with its colossal weight. She was preparing for the last minutes of her life. It flashed before her eyes in a brief moment. Suddenly, Yu stood before her. He asked her to forgive him for his momentary weakness, but now he would protect her. The young man took Yeon in his arms and carried her to the exit. He was grateful for her help and rescue. The next time the girl woke up in her bed, Lee Chan was there. The girl asked what had happened to her and why her whole body hurt. Had the guard really beaten her at night? He assured her that she had been unconscious for 2 days. The assistant was curious as to how the girl knew about the boss's secret. As soon as the fire surrounded him, Yugem lost control of himself and panicked. Chaos ensued around him, and the assistant was unable to get his boss out. Lee Chong ordered her to confess how the girl knew about Yu's fear of fire. After all, no one else had time to navigate the situation and come to the clan head for help. This aroused suspicion. One of the company's servants interrupted the conversation. Lee Chan changed before his eyes. He asked the girl to behave normally and to report all her whims to the guard. Yun was afraid that those people might return. She had another terrible dream. She was standing in the middle of a room engulfed in flames. The girl was calling for help, but there was no one around. She heard quiet footsteps behind her. Someone was sneaking up on her. Yeon realized that Yu Gyum was standing behind her. He aimed a gun at her and ordered her to be silent. After all, this was the last minute of her life. He wanted to know the truth about her feelings for him. The captive guessed that it was just a dream. Yu Ham was standing next to her bed, accompanied by his assistant. He was going to talk to him about the organization's secret affairs, which had gone rather badly lately. More and more people in Utopia were dying at the hands of their enemies. Over time, it could happen that the president of the organization would also find himself in a dangerous situation. A girl was also involved in the affairs. It was a good argument against Baekxian. However, at the same time, it could have become a good excuse for Baek Ho to attack. After all, the situation was becoming quite dangerous and taking sharp turns. There were only 2 options. Either the organizations would continue to destroy each other, or it was worth telling the father about everything and waiting for his reaction and a solution to the issue from his side. John to pretend that she was asleep and didn't hear anything. After all, if she was discovered, she could be severely punished. Added to all this was the question of the peace treaty between the organizations. This was not in the original novel. And if the old clan leader finds out the truth about the girl, he will not be happy. Then Yu Huan will have a chance to take the place of the leader Cease, and she will take advantage of it. John Bell has decided to put an end to all her suffering herself. It's time to act decisively and take her own destiny into her own hands. First, find the right clothes for your escape. Luckily, one of the guards had left his clothes in the wardrobe. At the moment, it was the best thing that could happen to a fugitive. However, she didn't attach much importance to it. In fact, she was happy when she found her cell phone in her pocket. But she shouldn't have rejoiced too soon. The girl understood that the hardest part would be escaping through the door with the guards standing by. John approached the window, which offered a beautiful view. She leaned her hand against the glass, and a secret passage suddenly opened before her. But a new question arose. Where did this door lead, and would she fall into a trap? The fugitive found herself in a long glass corridor. This was the very place that so much was written about in the novel. It was here that Yu Gyum confessed his feelings to Baek Ho, and it was here that the main scene unfolded. A long spiral staircase opened up before the girl. It could be dangerous there, but Yeon preferred to just act, rather than just stand there and wait for Yu Hua's men to come for her. Downstairs, Yu Hem was completely in the power of his sister. She emphasized that if he had died with his mother, it would have been much better for everyone, and many problems could have been avoided. The young man was silent, and Yu Hua had been questioning him for more than an hour about the girl's whereabouts. The daughter of the head of Utopia wanted to take Baek Ho's sister to her father and earn his praise. The boy did not give up. He announced that he was not going to help his sister in her ambitious plans. Yu Ham's gaze was directed towards the girl, and he looked at her carefully. Yeon became scared. She couldn't imagine that her savior would betray her sister. After all, in that case, she couldn't count on anyone at all. She had to run away and save her life. There was no need to delay. Yu Jem grabbed her hand. He wasn't going to let her go just like that. He was also interested in the question of whether the girl really liked him. This manic obsession scared her for some reason. The hopeless situation forced the girl to remind herself that she had once saved the boy. Now she demands similar gratitude from him. And then they will be able to contact each other later. Yu-Geum is serious about not letting go of his girlfriend. He openly declares that he cannot imagine his life without her, although it may sound strange and uncertain now. However, that is exactly the truth. Sad and uncertain memories flashed through the boy's mind. He was struck by how strange the images that accompanied his thoughts of childhood were. Then, for the first 12 years, he lived without a name. On that strange summer day, the boy appeared before him like a ray of light. They both did not want to part, despite the fact that they had met by chance. These memories became his outlet. At that time, he could not even think that his life would turn into hell after one day. That's when he had to kill the guy. He was required to do this to prove his worth. The sister emphasized that his father was ready to accept him into the clan, despite the fact that many doubted the appropriateness of this act. After Yu Hem dealt with his comrade, he would become a true son. From that moment on, his life was constantly being destroyed. But now the girl has brought him new hope. He has received an incentive for his development, so he is definitely not able to let her go. John understood his desperation. For a moment, it seemed to her that their sufferings were somehow similar. But on his part, it seemed like a selfish, vile act directed against her. The girl was about to explain to him that she had to leave this place for them to stay alive. But Yu Hua's voice came from behind. She asked who the girl was next to her brother. The sister demanded an explanation. Despite this, the young man replied that she was his fiancée. And that was exactly what she could tell her father about, because she would certainly do so. And next time Hua should watch her language. The issue was resolved by itself. The girl was placed in a room under the personal guard of Yu Hem's loyal people. In addition, he ordered her to be issued an invitation and included in the guest list. Yan was surprised. She asked why she couldn't leave the organization's building freely. The young man emphasized that he simply could not lose her. After all, much of his future depended on her. He had no other choice, despite the fact that he was forced to keep her. It seemed that Yu Ham had decided to take her with him to show off to all the guests and those present. The girl didn't want this, but she simply had no other choice. She was in Yu Ham's power. Yan ordered Li Chan to be called, with whom she intended to speak frankly. She asked what was the reason for her being kept locked up in this house and not allowed to go anywhere. The girl asked why they were trying to use her for the sake of the fight over the right to copy. Well, if Li didn't want to notice her, she was ready to cooperate with him on the condition that he would help her escape. Yeon manipulated the boy. She said that everyone around her understood perfectly well that the last days were coming for the head of the family. No one doubted that Yu Hua would become the heir, but there was a high probability that this would not happen. She had not consolidated her position very much, and after the death of the head of Utopia, war would definitely begin. And the winner would not necessarily be Yu Hua and her accomplices. Yuan suggested either nominating Li Chan himself or joining Yu Gyum's party. Then they would have every chance of becoming the leaders of the organization and conquering all the clans within. The girl ordered to call Yu Hem, but the assistant refused to do so. Yan replied that she did not want to use such methods, but was forced to do it. She was going to hit Li with a bottle. Yu Gyum's assistant came to him. The young man reported that in the morning, Li Chan had come to Yon's room. It seemed that she was going to run away and was looking for an assistant. Yu Hem did not want to hear anything about his captive's escape. He refused to believe it and ordered that only important matters be reported to him from now on. He was not going to listen to nonsense. Added to all this was the order not to try to control the girl's every step. After all, she could be offended, and then all his plans would go down the drain. The young man wanted to establish a relationship with John. The assistant was ordered to proceed as instructed. Suddenly, the door to the office opened very abruptly, interrupting the conversation. The servant was reporting the incident in the girl's room, and she was not going to stop. All guilty, John looked like a wounded woman and covered in blood. But it was a simple trick to draw attention to herself personally. The girl was not going to accept her situation and asked to be respected in the future. After that, John was even allowed to leave the borders of Utopia. The girl was still under complete control, although at first glance it seemed that no one was following her anymore, and she was not under constant supervision. The girl tried to come to terms with the situation. She thought about solving this problematic issue once and for all. Despite all her efforts, Yugem did not go for a more relaxed contact. The last time they had spoken freely was after he had treated her injured arm. The boy had agreed that it was wrong to hold a person the way he was doing it to her, and had allowed them to go for walks. Yugem suggested going for a walk. However, there was a huge possibility that the girls would pay a lot of attention to him in the company. He didn't want to put Yeon and himself at risk, so he followed his assistant's advice and gave the girl glasses. Yugem asked her to act natural and pretend that she was his personal bodyguard. The girl was surprised by such mystery. The two of them were heading towards an abandoned place through the thicket. Yeon asked where and why they were going. The boy replied that there would be a hunt. The girl was used to his oddities and curiosities. Yugem handed the girl a gun and asked if she wanted to be free. Yeon was confused, but the young man emphasized that he would give her a chance to save her own life. She was about to accept the offer when she thought it might be some kind of test. The boy advised her to gather her strength and run away as soon as she could. The poor thing was curious about what her fate would be if she was caught. Yuham said that he would be the hunter alone. And when he caught her, when he hunted down the prey, he would do with her whatever his heart desired. John ran through the forest. There was only one thought in her head. She must not be caught. She had no right to remain a victim. Now it was up to her to decide what her future would be and how she would deal with it. Over time, she got tired. It started to rain. The girl realized that wherever she tried to escape, danger lurked everywhere. The forest surrounded her on all sides and tried to block the path to escape. It seemed as if she had found herself in a labyrinth. In her thoughts, Yeon did not notice the dog that had come out to her in the clearing. The animal was growling, and its intentions could be considered ambiguous. Yugyum's assistant was holding two huge dogs on leashes that were supposed to help with the hunt. This girl was known to Yeon because the stranger had talked to Lee Chan about something the day before the hunt. The stranger, in turn, said that she had finally found her and was going to deal with her now. After all, she had wanted to do this for a long time. Ever since the girl tried to escape from the main building of Utopia, she was the one who threw the phone into the guard's clothes during the first attempt to escape. But Yeon didn't listen to her. The girl wasn't going to just die and leave this world. She would defend herself. Lee Chan ran to his boss. He asked what happened to Yeon. Did Yu-gyum really kill her? He replied that he would never have threatened her life or tried to do anything bad to her. The assistant said that it was necessary to get rid of the girl right away. The leader of the opposing organization somehow found out about the hunt and arrived in this forest to save his sister. For Yu-hum himself, there was no need to explain anything. At that time, Baek Ho held his sister by the neck and pointed a gun at the dog that was about to attack the poor runaway. His brother arrived just in time. The young man and Yeon hid behind a tree. The girl asked what brought him here, but Baek was the first to ask if his sister was in a relationship with Yu-gum, and why she didn't try to get away from him. Yeon thought about how different the events in the novel were from what she was experiencing now. It felt like her brother had come to protect her and save her from the villains of Utopia. She wasn't going to tell him that she didn't want to leave the organization. She thought that she would feel better with Yu-hem around. However, it was not worth getting Baek Ho angry right now. The young man emphasized that it was hard to believe, but he had come specifically to rescue his sister from captivity by an enemy clan. Yeon couldn't guess if he was serious now. Until now, the girl had considered her brother to be somehow empty, devoid of emotions. Yeon thought that the reason for this could be the absence of a loved one in her brother's life, in particular Yu-gum. John understood that now it was worth supporting any initiative of his brother, because the lives of both of them depended on this direction. It had started to rain in the forest, so their chances of escaping were increasing with every minute. The young man pointed out that they were now wearing bulletproof vests that would protect them from small arms fire. Baek Ho thought that he had never been in such a dangerous situation alone. Finally, they managed to escape pursuit. The people of the Utopia clan searched in vain. The girl and her brother disappeared without a trace. They clearly survived the hunt. John and his brother were hiding. The girl asked why they had stopped moving. The young man replied that there was a question about the direction of escape. Most likely, they had simply gotten lost, but the boy would not admit it. The girl suggested what she thought was a brilliant idea. She advised calling one of their people and asking them to come to this place and pick them up, to which Peck replied that there was no communication in the mountains. It was also impossible to wait for morning. After all, the danger was growing with every minute. To stay in the forest at night, where a gang was looking for you, was the height of stupidity towards one's own life. So it was worth moving. On the way, they came across a cave. The girl didn't really want to go in there. The idea of hiding there was stupid from the very beginning and didn't inspire much confidence in John. In the absence of other options, it was better than doing nothing. But more than snakes and wild animals, the girl was worried about the question of her pursuers. It was better to take a risk than to run into enemies. Baek Ho skillfully lit the fire, and his sister's fears were somewhat dispelled by the fact that she no longer felt alone, and the fire gave her faith that everything would be fine in the future. It was very nice to sit by the fire, because the coolness of the night chilled the girl, who was not used to such hikes, to her very bones. She is grateful to her brother for not abandoning her in the most dangerous moment. Baek Ho was undressing. He was going to dry his clothes, which had gotten wet in the rain. But the girl was now embarrassed that it was the first time she had seen his beautiful young body so close. The young man didn't stop there. He firmly grabbed the girl's hand and ordered her not to resist, but to do the same thing he was doing. Otherwise, he would be forced to undress her by force. John felt threatened by his words and became wary. Despite this, she was not going to humiliate herself in front of anyone again. Her brother noticed the change in her behavior and began to reassure her. But John advised her to be simpler and express herself more clearly in the future. The girl thanked her for her concern. It turned out that she had nothing against the company, but asked them to behave politely. The boy noticed his sister looking at him intently. He asked her to look away and not try to follow his every move. He certainly didn't intend to insult her or do anything wrong. Despite her promises, the girl fell asleep. She hadn't expected that sleep would wear her down so quickly. However, the excitement and nighttime wanderings had done their dirty work. The girl felt absolutely nothing. The brother was about to gently cover her. He had never been so close to her before, to be able to see the features of the girl's face and see how beautiful she really was. The thought of undressing the girl suddenly flashed in his head, so that she wouldn't get sick. It might have scared her, but at that moment, Baek Ho didn't think about the consequences. Perhaps it wasn't just concern for his sister that made him do it. John's body attracted him. An unknown force, which he had not encountered before, forced him to do such a thing. In a strange way, he somehow remembered his childhood. The girl had just come to his house then. Until that moment, no one dared to interfere in his personal space and violate his personal boundaries. And this girl changed the course of his life. Without realizing it, he became very accustomed to her, and the absence of John by his side forced him to go to her aid. He had never done anything like this before. The young man did whatever he thought was necessary for himself personally, and no one else. Yeon woke up early in the morning. The sun had already risen above the horizon, and she realized she had slept through the night. She was wearing her brother's jacket, and she couldn't remember the moment she had put it on herself. Ho entered the cave. He was still half naked from the top down, and did not consider it necessary to be ashamed of his sister's presence. The young man emphasized that they should leave. John was indignant that she was covered by her brother's jacket. He could have done not only that to her that night, but something much worse. However, it happened the way it happened, and she was not going to blame anyone. Finally, Baek Ho asked if she wanted to continue enjoying his beauty and body, or if he could get dressed now. To which Yeon thought how angry and infuriating he was making her. They walked through the dark forest. The girl thought about how much Baek Ho now resembled the hero she had read about. She was even afraid to talk to him before. But the fact that the young man risked his own life to save his sister made us wonder about his motives. He couldn't have done it just for fun or entertainment. The sister and Baek Ho were talking about how the young man had managed to find her. She didn't wait for an answer to her question. A bullet hit a tree right next to them. Another one whistled past Baek Ho. The young man threw his sister the car keys and ordered her to run. He understood where they were, so he easily pointed out the way to go. And he himself was going to delay the chase and distract from John. The girl was indignant, but the guy ordered her to wait for him in the car for 10 minutes. If he doesn't come, then she should get out and go to their base. There, she will call for help, and Baek Ho will be helped to free himself. There was no time for further conversation. The young man pulled out a pistol and opened fire on his pursuers. Finally, he emphasized that now was not the time to be guided by emotions, but to act wisely for their safety. Finally, a car appeared on the side of the road. The girl did not expect that she would find it so quickly. Now all that remained was to wait for Baek Ho. The voice inside insisted that the boy must be saved. 10 minutes passed, and her brother was still missing. The girl had no choice but to go to his rescue. He wasn't going to leave her alone, so she had to save him now. John Bell knew perfectly well that without her brother, the organization would fall into chaos, and she would also lose her own position. Danger was pursuing her anyway, and saving Baek Ho was the lesser evil. Finally, the young man jumped into the car. The girl had to circle around to find him. Peck was glad he hadn't been abandoned because the chase was almost on his shoulders. His sister arrived in time. John Bell didn't care that the guy's car was bulletproof. It had protection against small arms in any case, but that didn't save the situation. A car crashed into them at high speed. Through the glass of his door, John Bell saw Yu Hem. He was desperately banging on the glass and begging not to leave him. After all, his feelings for the girl were the only thing that kept him in this world and gave him the strength to live. John Bell thought that she had no right to give the boy any hope. After all, his love was really for someone else. So, although it was very harsh, she told him that he had simply lost. The brother ordered them to move as quickly as possible because the chase was approaching. The members of Utopia would not listen to Yu Ham and his stories about feelings. A shootout between the groups was about to begin. Baek Ho was a skilled marksman, and soon the pursuers abandoned their plans to catch up with the fugitives. Yeon thought they had escaped, but Yu Geum stood in their way again. He was simply obsessed with the girl. His maneuvers threatened to kill all participants in the car accident. The cars collided with each other. The speed was extraordinary for such a terrain. John Bell was trying to come to her senses when Yu Ham stood over her. He held a gun in his hands and aimed it directly at the girl. Between them was only glass, a loaded gun, and the young man's desire for revenge. The girl asked him to think things over and not do anything stupid, to which he replied that the only stupid thing would be to leave her. She understood that it was just a game, and it was worth showing that she was not a weakling. John Bell pressed the gun to her head and promised to shoot the young man if he didn't calm down. He asked her to stop because she had recently told him about her feelings. The girl admitted that she did it so that he would believe her, weaken his attention to it, and she would have a chance to escape. Added to all this was his low origin, the son of a prostitute and a mafia boss. The effect she achieved surprised her. The gun was pointed directly at her forehead. The girl concentrated on this. Yu Ham could have fired the bullet without hesitation. In his opinion, it would have been better if she had lied to the end. A shot rang out. John Bell fell with the thought that she was going to die at the hands of one of the heroes. After all, that was the outcome of the novel's plot. It didn't matter who would be her killer, it all happened. Yu Geum woke up in his chair. He looked around carefully, but only Lee Chan was there. The boy asked why the boss fell asleep in the chair again instead of resting normally in bed. The young man knew perfectly well that he had not fired the shot that time. Never in his life had he hesitated before firing a shot at his enemy. But this time he stopped. His hand could not pull the trigger. Yu Geum ordered his assistant to check the girl's death certificate issued by the Ministry of Health. Some doubts about the fate of Yeon Bell were present at Ugema. The brother did everything he could to save the girl. He personally took her to the hospital his people used so that Yeon's injury would not be made public. The girl survived the operation. Baek Ho asked the doctor when he would have the opportunity to transport his sister to the island. To which the man replied that in the near future they would not be able to travel that far and go somewhere far away. The boy remembered the moment his sister was wounded. Over the years of running the corporation, he had often seen the death of his subordinates and had been on the verge of death more than once. But this time he was truly scared. The only thought that dominated his mind right now was the thought that all those responsible for the assassination attempt on his sister would be punished. Anger and rage clouded his mind and prevented him from thinking calmly about everything that was happening. Pek Ho recalled the history of the organization's founding. It was formed by the Ho family on an island in Hong Kong, over which a long-standing war had raged. As the island had many useful deposits of minerals and substances, Ho family won. And from then on, the position of President Baekjeon was passed down through blood ties. However, it was difficult for Baek Ho-won to become the leader. The reason was his mother. When the boy was 16, his mother died. He was forced to live with this burden. His father simply went crazy with grief. He brought into the family a woman who looked like his deceased wife. The woman was not alone. She had a daughter. 4 years later, he and his new wife died. No one was against Baek Ho. He took his father's place in the organization. But events unfolded in a way no one could have imagined. The boy, who grew up in his father's shadow, became a real beast. He paved the way to power on his own, without any concessions to anyone around him. His cruelty and ruthlessness became legendary. The late mother often came to the young man in his dreams. He did everything in order not only to become a mafia boss, but also to take revenge for his wife. But the girl got in the way. She drove him crazy. He lost his composure around her. John visited him. Belle? This time everything was different. His feelings for his sister were not giving him any comfort and were oppressing him. The boy stood over the hospital bed in which John lay. Belle. He didn't know what to say or do, but he was ready to do anything to keep the girl alive and with him. Belle woke up. She saw the boy next to her and thought it was another dream. However, he asked her not to be afraid, but to trust him. After all, after the adventure in the forest, he realized how dear she was to him. His sister asked him to use less pathos in his words. After all, he usually didn't treat her very well. However, this time Baek Ho couldn't stand it anymore. He told her that she was giving him nightmares again. The doctor distracted them from talking about dreams and what each of them was doing there. The guard heard voices in the ward and therefore called the doctor to examine the victim. And he already asked her to be more attentive to her condition. The man emphasized that one should not lose vigilance and constantly monitor one's condition and always ensure that the girl is ready for a change in condition within 1 day. Baek Ho finally asked if he could take his sister to the island after that. The doctor agreed to such an arrangement, since he had an idea of who he was talking to and who his patient was at the moment. Hwa's birthday party. Lee Chan wonders why he decided to visit his sister, since everyone around him knew about their relationship. Yu Geum had been acting strangely after the events in the forest. He tried not to show his emotions, but he was doing a pretty poor job of it. He didn't change his intention to go to Baekjeon in person. Lee Chan didn't support the idea. He emphasized that it was more like suicide. But Yu Geum didn't consider other options. But this was the only way he could hope to see Belle. Baek Ho listened to his assistant. He reported that a proposal to meet had been received from the Utopia Corporation. One of the members of the group requested a personal meeting and conversation with the head of Baekjeon. The young man understood that the financial situation inside forced the Utopia organization to act accordingly. They could no longer withstand the pressure from small firms and companies and wanted peace for themselves. So he ordered his assistant to organize a meeting. You shouldn't refuse a person who puts his head in the noose on his own. This way, they will get additional leverage over the enemy. The leader wanted to end the conversation there. Gi-won understood that his leader had decided to visit his sister. But once again, he did not dare to meet the girl in person. The doctor spoke to John. Belle, he said that at the moment, her tests are in excellent condition. There is nothing to be afraid of. The situation is improving every day. Her injury was serious, but her body is strong and resilient. The doctor insisted that she should stick to a daily regimen and take medication. But the girl was not happy. The medication had a strange effect on her. She constantly wanted to sleep after taking it. Belle asked to call her brother. The doctor explained that he visited her all the time, but the patient was asleep. The girl asked if it was strange that she just slept most of the day. Sister Beck Ho abruptly got out of bed and threw a glass cup on the floor. The doctor couldn't help but sit up in his chair. Yongbel asked what exactly the doctor was hiding from her, and if she was really being manipulated. On top of everything, she took from him a special card that opened all the doors in the organization's building, and such an artifact is not given to the first comer. After all, the doctor had personal contacts with Beck Ho. Later, the girl managed to get much more out of the young man than she had expected. The doctor turned out to be a utopian spy who had added a sleeping pill to the drugs that John was taking. Belle, that's why she felt so strange. Yu Hem must have known from his spy that the girl was actually alive, and that a certificate of her death had been issued for a large sum of money. Yan Bell ordered the doctor to tell Beck Ho that he allegedly gave the medicine to the boss's sister. The young man went into the room where his sister usually rested, but today she was not there. She was waiting for him. John Bell asked why he was so surprised and confused. Beck Ho asked why she wasn't sleeping. The girl decided not to hide anything anymore. She explained that she had refused to take the medicine the doctor had prescribed today. She was feeling much better. She was ready to forgive him, but in return, her brother had to teach her how to shoot and handle weapons. She no longer wanted to feel defenseless and unable to stand up for herself. The girl insisted on this because it was better to be kidnapped and alive than to be with well-groomed, tender hands in captivity of a hostile group. Beck Ho did not know how to answer this. Oppa from now on, which meant a very high level of trust and respect for him from his sister. The young man insisted on this and was not going to refuse. He also promised that he would do his best to help the girl master the art of shooting a pistol. Her safety will continue to be one of the organization's priorities. The girl called her brother Appa. He leaned closer to her and took her chin. The young man asked her not to stop and to repeat it again. He simply could not believe that he had managed to conquer the girl so quickly. John Bell didn't fight back. She behaved calmly and generally tried to be good, so as not to arouse new suspicions and become free from outside influence. The girl had time to think about it. The brother ordered to ask the doctor tomorrow whether physical activity is allowed for John Bell. If that's the case, then she can immediately send someone to get her brother, and they'll start training. The girl called the doctor to her for a conversation. She was interested in who sent him, Yu Hua or Yu Gum. A lot depended on this. A loud noise was heard from outside the room, distracting from the conversation. Shuri burst into the room. You! He didn't know what to do when he finally saw his girlfriend. After all, she had disappeared so suddenly, leaving no message for him and sending no news. The young man talked about how he had become the head of his clan. Although he had not wanted this from the very beginning, it so happened that all the old men who were against him died under mysterious circumstances. But they will definitely have a minute to talk about it. And now it's time to start learning how to shoot a pistol. After all, it is Doshi who will be her trainer and mentor in this matter. The young man received an assignment from Beck Ho. The girl asked why he was chosen as her teacher. In fact, many people would have preferred to be her teacher. Doshi replied, not without pride, that Beck Ho considered him the most worthy. The doctor insisted that his work was not yet finished, and he was ready to come to the shooting range to continue there during the breaks between shootings. John Bell ordered not to do this. She understood that it was really about spying for Utopia, so that she could share useful information with her employers. She didn't want the doctor to see or learn anything. Li Chan arrived at Baekjeon's organization and was walking along the pier. He wondered why he couldn't catch that scoundrel with his own hands. The young man didn't understand when he said it out loud. His words were heard by Yu Gyum, who miraculously arrived at the place before him. Yu suggested going further to the estate, but the guard Beck Ho forbade Yu Gyum to go further, as it was a personal order. The young man pretended to be very sorry. But in the end, he ordered someone to be caught for him to kidnap him, and then Li Chan would receive a reward. Someone else could read his lips, and then problems would begin. Doshi trained the girl. He praised her for her success, but Yan Bell said that she was not a blood relative of Beck Ho, so it was not worth comparing their successes and writing them off as genetic. She tried to take another shot when Yu Geum grabbed her waist from behind. The girl did not expect such a turn of events, but the boy did not intend to do anything bad to her. John Bell wondered how he had managed to get into the organization's building. The young man replied that if Baek Ho had managed to do something similar, why shouldn't he have been able to do it? The comparison with the girl's brother gave Yu Hem a reason to respect himself. After all, since childhood, he had been forced to earn the love and respect of others. As he thought about it, he forgot about the danger. Doshi stood behind him, aiming a gun at the uninvited guest's head. Yugem tried to explain that he had come to visit their boss. However, the young man did not believe him. He emphasized that the guest did not actually arrive unexpectedly and did not try to escape the guards. The noise in the corridor had caught their attention. It was clear that the guards had managed to catch Li Chan. The girl was tired of the constant problems and troubles that were happening around her. She became interested in what her stepbrother was doing and what his relationship was to all of this. After all, everything was happening in the main building. Added to all this were the doctor's words about Baek Ho constantly being with his sister. But she was constantly sleeping, and when that stopped, his brother's visits ended for good. The girl fell to her knees on the floor. People gathered around her. Everyone was worried about John Bell. In this way, she actually hoped to attract Baek Ho's attention by creating a buzz around her. The sister was left alone with her brother. She asked why Yu Gem was in the organization's main building now and how he got here. After all, this definitely couldn't have happened just like that. Baek Ho was unhappy that Young Bell was actually so concerned about the guest. Last time, he didn't think she showed any interest in the enemy either. The girl got angry. She was about to leave the room because she didn't want to take part in the events that would develop here. Perhaps she would become the cause of a love triangle. The brother grabbed her by the waist and asked if she had forgotten anything. It seemed to him that the girl had decided to deceive him again. And it concerned the promise to call him Appa. At which Yeon got angry. She broke free from his embrace and asked why she would call him that when his behavior now resembled that of an offended child. And there was nothing more he could do about his wild desires. At the exit from the room, Yu-geum was waiting for her. He impressed her with his recklessness and useless courage, which would not lead a good guy to anything. But he still did not give up hope of talking to his beloved. John Bell guessed the real reason for the hug in her half-brother's office. He had done it on purpose so that Yu-geum would become an unwilling witness to their relationship, which Baek Ho believed existed. Yu-geum is forced to admit that she has bewitched him. After their last meeting, he has put a lot of effort into finding out the fate of the girl, who many believe is dead, but today had put a lot of things in their proper place for him. He was no longer going to run after her and talk about his feelings. It was, in his opinion, unworthy of his position. After that, the girl continued to shoot. Doushi wondered why she was doing it so diligently. After all, the girl's plans did not include working for the organization as a killer. John Bell didn't think it was appropriate to explain the reasons for her efforts. She was simply afraid of being kidnapped again and becoming a prisoner in the house of Yu Ham and Utopia. Or worse, becoming a victim of Yu Hua. Du Shiyu added that if she wanted to escape from here, she could simply ask him for a similar favor, because by right, he was considered the head and owned the house. Baek Ho, who had entered the room, did not think so. Who had entered, Du realized it was time for him to take a walk and leave the couple alone. He wasn't going to bother with their company and try to find out something useful for himself so he could manipulate Baek Ho later. Brother praised John Bell for her success in shooting. He didn't want to conflict or spoil his relationship with her after their last meeting. The girl asked if it was true that he was going away for a short while. Meanwhile, the girl watched Baek Ho, who looked very handsome with a gun in his hands. She was simply delighted with what was happening and why the young man was a real star in the noir genre. Suddenly, the young man asked if she really wanted to take his place in the organization, and whether he should be nervous and afraid now, and whether he should interpret her activities as an attempt to declare war. Baek Ho didn't stop there. Not letting his sister recover, he emphasized that she would soon have the opportunity to experience herself as the leader of Baek Cheon. After all, this weekend she would be at a meeting with him. There she will be accepted as one of the leaders in the organization and members of the clans subordinate to Baekjeon will testify to their loyalty. The girl did not expect such a turn of events and is clearly confused by this. John Bell believed that this was clearly a delusion, and she would definitely not be able to simply exist safely in this house anymore. Although it was on an island and access to it was limited, the girl was going to escape. A servant interrupted her thoughts. He said that the boss had asked him to tell her about the schedule of a meeting in Hong Kong, where she was definitely supposed to go with him. The girl didn't know what to say. Silence was interpreted as consent. The girl clearly could not miss this event. After all, according to the plot, there were many important events there, but there was a threat from the assassination attempt of Utopia and its organizers. Moreover, Yu Hum himself was still on the island. It seemed that he was willing to make himself a prisoner in order to stay here longer. This behavior raised questions among many. No matter what her brother was up to, she would still try to deal with Yu Him. She didn't really like the young man's obsession with her. The threats and the look the young man gave her at the end didn't give her peace. There was an incomprehensible sound behind the door. The girl grabbed her gun. She wasn't going to sell her life just like that. She was fed up with the fact that lately, only the lazy one had been preparing bad things for her. Yu Him came in through the window. Young Bell wasn't expecting him. His hugs and gentle squeezes were unexpected and unusual for her. No one else had ever done or treated her like that. And this is considering that the time before last, he had aimed a gun at her and was ready to kill her out of jealousy. But frightened and forced to treat everyone with suspicion, Jan didn't fully believe it. The young man's behavior was strange. He gave the impression that he was not completely crazy, but he had no choice. He was simply in love with her. And Ioan Bell was more interested in how he managed to get here. She was afraid to admit one thought. The girl did not want to believe that the young man had sneaked here to kill her. After all, if he wanted revenge, he would not have behaved like this. The girl rushed to run away. She believed that he was leaving revenge until last, only to suddenly attack the victim, who would relax and not expect a trick from the enemy. The security guard behind the door heard sounds from the girl's room. They asked the lady to open the door, but she said she was just doing exercises, and they shouldn't be distracted by her. They weren't supposed to see Yu Hem. John Bell ordered the guy to get out, as the security might disobey her order and break into the room. Yu Ham joked, saying that he couldn't remember how he got here. The head of security warned that the lady had a minute to get dressed. The girl threw Yu Ham into the closet and ordered him to sit quietly and not try to provoke the security and Baekjeon in general. But the young man grabbed her and dragged her into the closet. He held her tightly and wouldn't let go. John said he was crazy because the guards would be looking for her because she couldn't just disappear from the room. The hiccups hit the girl at the wrong time. Yu Gyum covered her mouth. Yan heard the guards give orders to their colleagues to start a search. After all, the building was supposed to be completely surrounded in case of danger. Meanwhile, Yu Gyum offered his own way to get rid of the hiccups. He kissed the girl on the neck. She couldn't resist. Otherwise, the guards would find her and wouldn't leave her alone and would chase her. Finally, the guard left the room. The girl and her partner fell out of the closet. The young man was amused, and Yan thought about the consequences of such jokes for both of them. But it is worth noting that the hiccups actually disappeared. John Bell chased the boy away. He tried to make a joke, but realized in time that it would be a futile attempt. The lady now looked like a real dragon, about to breathe fire. Her last words were an order not to come to her room again. Otherwise, she would simply hand him over to Baekjeon for slaughter, without regretting it once. Yu Gyum was scared. Lee Chan was furious with his friend in the room. He wondered how he had managed to disappear into the enemy's house. After all, anything could happen to him. Yu Gam replied that he just wanted to take a walk. The conversation turned to a hacker boy who had done great harm to Utopia with his actions. But at the moment, only the approximate coordinates of this internet hacker's location were known. Lee Chan said that at the moment, the search is being conducted by Yu Gyum's personal bodyguard. The girl did not like her boss's new passion, so she really wanted to please him. It was her idea to use dogs to hunt for Yan. Belle was in the forest at the time, but no one could have even imagined that she would try to get rid of her opponent with the help of dogs and a gun. Yu Gyum was very angry then, and if it had been anyone else in the girl's place, he would have paid dearly for his mistake. But the conversation turned again to the hacker who had also hurt Baekjeon's organization. But Yu Gyum was in no hurry to deal with the pest. He was more interested in whether, by catching him, he could instill trust in Baekjeon and thus stay in this place longer. Lee Chan had never felt so strange. His boss's actions recently had really surprised him and made him think. He was going to kill the girl, but when he saw her, his intentions changed in the opposite direction. Yuhim realized a long time ago that he loved Wyon Bell. He tried to hide his own feelings, but diligently tried to win her attention and draw the beauty's gaze to his modest person. The day has come for the clan leaders to meet in Hong Kong. Yon Bell, accompanied by her assistants and Biek Ho, arrived at the main headquarters. The girl still looked tired, but she couldn't show it. There was a lot of security around. The brother made sure that after the previous incident, his sister was constantly under surveillance and that nothing threatened her life. She behaved naturally and gave no reason for suspicion. The girl's assistant said that the entire hotel building was under the complete control of Baekjeon. The lower floors are inhabited by guards and soldiers of the organization, and further, there are people from the clans. The man ordered his subordinates not to leave the girl for a moment. She was to be the main target for all of them tonight. We must not allow this situation to happen again. John Bell wondered why she was being treated like this even in an elevator, where the only threat would be someone who could walk through walls. Suddenly, the elevator shook and everyone around her started to walk in a staggered manner. The girl became worried. She was so excited that she didn't see the boy who had climbed out of the hatch in the ceiling behind her. The stranger was clearly planning something evil and treacherous for her. The redhead stood behind the girl in a strange way. She clearly didn't expect this, and the stranger asked if she was ready to get to know him, even though it wasn't the first time they'd met. The young man's name was Kyung Tae-jun. He took unusual pleasure in seeing Yugum suffer. Kyung had an attachment to the main character. However, because Yugum rejected his offers, he was constantly suffering. At this point, the meeting between the redhead and the girl ended. He announced that they would continue today at the restaurant downstairs. Refusal was not accepted, because to invite her, he had to maim 2 people. The girl was openly wondering if her interlocutor was a psychopath. She didn't think about the fact that he actually appreciated her company because he found her so attractive. Kaiten's main motive was that he wanted to hurt his object of worship. And he almost succeeded. He wasn't going to just give in to Yuham's feelings. Someone knocked on the door. John Bell would have been glad to see anyone who came to see her now. Her doctor was standing on the doorstep, and although they had had various disagreements in the past, she threw herself into his arms. The girl closed the door behind the guy with a sharp movement. He clearly didn't expect anything like this. Fear and confusion could be read on his face, and the girl was satisfied with what she had. John Bell decided to talk to him really frankly. She wanted to be in someone's company and enjoy the company she had at the moment. The doctor began to tell her about himself. Hard fate forced him to work as a spy. Before he started working for Utopia, he was an ordinary student. He didn't even have to hold a weapon in his hands. But the money did its job. But the main motive was not even that. Once upon a time, Angel had a younger sister. She was killed by Kong Tae-jun. The young man sought revenge with the help of Utopia's militants and his loyalty to the cause. To do this, Yugam promised to help settle the matter. But first, Angel had to do him a favor. He had to become a doctor for the girl who many believed was dead. John Bell felt ashamed of her suspicions. She asked for forgiveness, believing that the reason was a banal desire to become richer and more influential. But in fact, he was guided by other goals. After a heartfelt conversation, the girl sent the guy home and ordered him to pass on a request to the head of security to tighten measures for her safety. Yan was actually afraid of Kan. The girl was tired of thinking. She thought that she shouldn't worry about the invitation she received from the boy. John Bell didn't give it much importance. However, a message arrived on her mobile. The girl was so nervous that she wanted to eat. She thought about the danger of not being able to leave the room, and she hoped she would find some food in the room. She didn't want to call the security. John Bell was very surprised when, instead of a tray of sandwiches, she found her half-brother. He was wearing only a bathrobe, and the boy asked what the girl was doing in this room and why she was only in a nightgown. During the conversation, it turned out that they would be sharing one room for two. After all, there were few apartments of this type, so Yang and Baek Ho had to be accommodated in one, because they were supposedly even relatives. The conversation was supposed to end with words about how the girl should thank Baek Ho for saving her in the elevator and for his company, us, where she would be safe. But suddenly, Yan asked if the young man wanted to eat. Instead of ordering something for the room, the guy invited her to a restaurant. She responded ambiguously because she lacked courage, and as a result, she ended up in this establishment. It seemed like the girl had decided to just distract herself from the problem, although in reality, she was scared that she might end up with Can nearby. She wanted to be home right after that. A waiter came up to the table. He offered to take a photo together because their establishment had a promotion for the last couple of the day. The waiter disappeared. He asked for forgiveness because he didn't recognize them as brother and sister. Kang approached Yeon. He addressed her despite her brother's presence. The young man asked if she hadn't thought about him and had decided to go on a date with someone else. But he had been waiting for her for a long time. Yoo Hem also entered the hall. He suggested that everyone have dinner together. After all, in this way, he was trying to defuse the situation, although it was nowhere to be found. Everyone was alert and serious. John Bell replied that she had already eaten. However, Kang did not want to let her go. He tried to hold her back, but the girl's brother stopped him. Baek Cho warned the stranger not to let go of his hands. During the conversation, it became clear that the guys knew each other. They would not try to reconcile, because there was a long-standing enmity between them. The young men had a lot to remember, negative and unpleasant. Yu Gyum was ahead of everyone. He threw his jacket over the girl's shoulders and assured her that it was cold outside, and that way Yeon would feel normal and not freeze. The girl took it seriously. Yu Gyum explained his appearance at this place by saying that he was supposed to meet with Kano about the Russian smuggling case. So, one should not suspect him of malicious intent or a new conspiracy against Baekjeon. Baek Ho held the girl's hand tightly and insisted that she could not leave her protector until the danger was finally eliminated. So Yan would be by his side. The girl went to the bathroom. She wanted to be alone and collect her thoughts. She didn't pay attention to what was happening between the young men who surrounded her. Now she really wanted to return to the island. The phone vibrated. It was Yu Ham. The boy suggested meeting and talking, because then, in her room, he could not bring the matter to an end. He was trying to finally clarify his relationship with her. Her brother was waiting for her outside the door. He looked important and offered to be her companion for the evening, because he didn't want to leave her alone in the company of everyone present. The girl wanted peace. John Bell realized that the original story had changed. She would no longer hate her brother. Instead, she no longer had feelings for Yu Ham and Baek Ho. Nothing was going to threaten her life. Previously, her life depended on her father's will, which stated that until a certain time, Baek Ha-hee was supposed to take care of his sister and help her until she reached the appropriate age. After that, he could get rid of her. But now, the concern for her came from the very heart of his brother. He did not see her as a danger or an obstacle in his path. But it was not worth acting so self-confidently and completely trusting the guy. It seemed that for her brother at this point, she was something like a tame pet. Added to all this was the question of what to do with Yu Hem and his feelings. The girl defiantly threw the young man's jacket on the floor. After all, returning it would not be an appropriate act. This could raise a number of questions in Baek Ha-won. Baekjeon's boss was satisfied. But still, sooner or later, it is necessary to meet Yu Hem. After all, the current circumstances are such that the young man will not meet Baek Ha. And his injury will remain open. He will not heal. Kang stood in front of the memorial shelves. He placed a flower on the shelf that held the ashes of his loved one. The young man emphasized that the flower would mean that he would be remembered at least sometimes. The boy remembered that fateful day for him. Then, with his own hands, he strangled a boy close to him who was trying to take his place. And if it happened again, he would repeat it with pleasure. The boy was distracted from thinking about the revenge he would like to experience again by Yu Hua. She asked him how he could be with her little brother, Perhaps she was ready to say goodbye to him if Kang dared. Kang replied that he generally didn't mind Yugem's company, but they had met by chance. The girl wasn't interested in digressions and asked why he had killed her younger brother. The parallelism of their life circumstances made them think about how to rectify the situation. The main trump card was the murder of Yu Gum. He was to repeat the fate of his brother Kang. Meanwhile, John Bell was out shopping. She was accompanied by Doshi and a whole bunch of security guards. The attempt to avoid drawing attention to herself failed from the start. The girl's plan was that Doshi would take the security away at the appropriate moment, and then she would go about meeting with Yu Gum. No one was to know anything about this meeting or even suspect it. The boy himself agreed to act as a decoy for the guard, only because the girl promised not to tell anyone that she had exposed him as a spy. The young man immediately perked up and promised to fulfill her request. The security fell for the guy's trick. The girl was left alone. Li Chan approached her. The guy asked what she was doing in such a place alone. She answered honestly that she would try to meet Yu Hem. In fact, she understood perfectly well what such a meeting would entail. No one from Baekcheon or Utopia would be thrilled that some kind of connection was forming unofficially between their participants. Li Chan emphasized that it was definitely not Yu Gem who suggested the meeting. The young man analyzed everything that was happening and realized that someone was trying to set a trap for her. And the girl needed to return to the guard. Angel came to John Bell. He had a hard time finding her. The young man said that they wouldn't be able to get out of here right away. After all, someone had punctured the tires of their car. The security guards were trying to find the culprit. It remained a mystery who the madman was who was trying to commit a crime against one of the current important figures in the Baekcheon leadership. Many people already knew about this before the meeting. To John Bell approached Yu Hua. She grabbed the girl by the chin and asked if she was really expecting her brother. The two of them could make a good couple. The girl didn't hear the hidden context. Baekchen's head turned away. She had no intention of talking to the rude woman. Yu Hua asked if they had met before. Yan thought she was talking about her time at the Utopia office. John Bell said that the girl must have confused her with someone else, but the girl replied that she couldn't have done that. After all, she was the one who wrote those strange messages about meeting up. The girl learned from Hua that her brother had asked for help in organizing a meeting with Yoon Bell. After all, if he's with her in a crowded place, serious problems could arise for both parties. Yu Hua explained that the specifics of her brother's character were that when he liked a person, he would make every effort to possess them and keep them by his side until death. But according to Yu Hem's sister, there was a way out, and it was for her to kill her opponent first. After all, this way she would get peace and give Yu Hua a future perspective, for which she would pay the price. The poison should have acted on him quickly. Yu Hem, paralyzed, would not be able to resist, and then the matter would be left to Yon. Bell. Well, we should hurry. The matter can't wait that long. To follow Yu Hua. Although the girl convinced him that if he left his brother alive, he would start pursuing him. Bell, however, Sister Baek Ho did not want to act in such a way. The murder of one of Utopia's future leaders could have serious consequences. The girl couldn't expect everything to go smoothly. Not on their level, and not under their circumstances. Yu Hua proposed an interesting deal. They could exchange mutual favors, and the future head of Utopia could help get rid of the annoying little brother, Yeun Bell, so that she becomes the head. A commotion in the hall. People started shouting and pointing out that there was a fire. Everyone present was asked to leave the room. Yeon guessed that it was the work of Yu Hua and her people. After all, Hua was holding the girl's hand tightly and dragging her only in the direction she knew. The poor girl didn't even have a chance to look back to see if the guards or Doshi were following her. In the elevator, John Bell was left alone with Yu Hua. The girl didn't think she should worry about her brother. Now the main issue was saving her own life. You can expect anything from this crazy woman. It was worth running away. After all, once she was in this crazy woman's car, there would be no turning back. The mastery of execution left no doubt that the guards would not find her and would not help her. In the hands of John Bell found herself with a gun. There was no more time to think. A shot rang out loudly in the closed elevator cabin. Yu Hua did not expect such a turn of events. The shot confused her. Yan ran down the hallway. She should have done it as quickly as possible before Yuhua regained consciousness. The bullet missed her, and Yan didn't want to. But there was no point in delaying with this girl. That day, many things went wrong as people expected. Li Chan tried to call Yu Gum, but he was somewhere unknown. He wanted to inform his boss about the danger from Kang, whom he had met earlier. The assistant could not understand the reasons, but the presence of both, John Bell and Kana, left no doubt that they had not ended up in this room by chance. And Kan was clearly hostile. John Bell took the opportunity to call for help from Do Shi or Angel. She needed to hold out until they found her and could protect her from the crazy Yu Hua. Hua's voice from afar. She was talking to someone on the phone and promised to find Yon Bell and deal with her. The girl's torment and suffering will bring her unprecedented pleasure. Hua emerged from behind the car unexpectedly. She seriously tried to kill the girl, but later changed her mind. The fear in Yon's eyes made her rejoice like a child. The victim's torment gave her strength for the future. Yu Hua took advantage of her position. She asked what it felt like to be on the verge of death and life. Young Bell had already planned what she would do with her opponent now. The girl broke the bottle of poison that her former accomplice had recently given her. Yan drove a piece of glass into her opponent's leg, promising that she wouldn't even see the line between life and death she was talking about. But she fell. Yan was running away. She ran through the garage and tried to find a car similar to the one she had arrived in. Suddenly, a car stopped in front of her. The girl realized that Yu Gum was driving it. The young man reminded the girl, who was frozen in surprise, that she was being chased. He ordered her to finally climb into the cabin and get out of this place. A real hunt began for both of them. Yu Hua glared after the disappearing car. She thought about what she had learned about her little brother's true weakness. Now the task was even easier. All that remained was to catch both birds. Yu Him asked the girl not to be nervous. He is not going to kidnap her like last time. Instead, he will take her to his brother, Yeon. Belle could not understand the motives behind her new guardian's behavior. His brother and his bodyguard were already waiting. Yu Gyum called the head of Baekjeon in advance and informed him that he knew about the girl's whereabouts and that he would be able to rescue her and hand her over to his brother on his own. John Bell wondered if she would have a chance to see Yu Ham again after she left with her brother. So now she felt the need to speak to him directly and without any embellishment. The girl said that she had not been honest with him. But one of the many words she had spoken then was frank and sincere. The whole thing was about her selfishness and attitude towards people. The young man asked how he should feel about her words about liking her. The girl didn't know what to say. She now had an important and crucial moment ahead of her, one that would decide a lot. Finally gathering his strength, John Bell dared to answer. Her decision was to finally burn all the bridges behind her. The girl replied that she had not been completely sincere then, and in some ways she had been mistaken. The boy left. He was not going to bother her anymore and torture himself with unfulfilled fantasies and dreams about a happy future. Despair would settle in his heart for a long time. Baek Ho had a serious conversation with her. He was interested in how serious the relationship between his sister and Yu Hem could become. The young man warned that the last chance changes a lot in life. To trust someone means to be mistaken about something for oneself. So the sister, even though there had never been a very close relationship between them, must realize the seriousness of the situation. The guy warned her that he had known her too long to understand when she was trying to deceive him. So, in the future, she should be more careful with her actions and desires. It was clear that she couldn't resist Hassan choosing between the two, so sooner or later the moment would come when she would have to make a choice. The girl took this seriously. She understood that playing with her brother would be very dangerous for her. Yu Hua met Kong at a bar. The young man said that the girl was very bad at choosing places to meet. He did not hide the fact that the girl had injuries and damage on her body. Both understood perfectly well the purpose of their meeting. The girl ambiguously hinted that she was no longer going to tolerate her brother, and he, in turn, had to get rid of the most precious thing to him. This most precious thing was his John Bell. Kong got it right. He boasted about how he would watch Yu Hem's face as his wife died before his eyes, and he could do nothing. Their plan this time had no chance of failure. the hacker was helping them correctly. From the moment they got their hands on Baekho's plan and schedule, everything went according to the information they received. Yuhua didn't want to rely so much on a guy who sits in the corner of the room and hides his face from everyone. He doesn't even reveal his name to anyone, but uses a simple code. Behind them stood a stranger, his face hidden in the darkness. He smiled mysteriously and wondered if he had really done his job so badly and not helped his accomplices at all. John Bell arrived at her brother's house just in time. He spoke with his advisor, who told him that the tire on the girl's car had been deliberately damaged and that hackers had deleted all the videos from nearby cameras. The young man emphasized that the activities of Yuhua are clearly traced here. After all, it was she who recently gave rise to the search for the mysterious hacker who worked for Utopia and helped it in every way. Baek-ho knew that the girl was listening to their conversation, so he asked her directly what she thought about this. The girl asked to have Angela, her doctor, assigned to her. He was to ensure her safety. This proposal came as a surprise to the brother. He couldn't understand what an ordinary doctor could do that a security team couldn't. The assistant agreed. The doctor's skills wouldn't help. Angel to be brought to him so that he could talk to him. And now he and his sister had to go on an important business. During this period, no one was to disturb or worry them. Soon they were sitting in the restaurant. Joan Bell thought about how her brother liked to visit strange places when there were no guards around and they were alone. She also wondered what would happen next. Angel approached the table. He bowed and asked what important matter had compelled him to be summoned. The boss ordered to listen attentively and concentratedly, because the future depended on it. Baek-ho ordered that from now on, he should treat his sister responsibly and follow her in everything. The girl should always be with Angel, and he should protect her from trouble. The brother said that today he and his sister were to attend a party organized in honor of the gathering of all the clans. Joan Bell noticed that her brother's attitude towards her had changed a lot. And not only him, the guests gathered in the large hall. Everyone was actively discussing something and was about to enjoy the evening. The appearance of Baek Ha-won, accompanied by her sister, confused everyone and made them fall silent. But soon the girl was left alone. Her brother, as always, became the main person of the evening. And John looked for Angel. He was either skillfully hiding or pretending not to know about his mission. Angel arrived unexpectedly. He said that the reason for the delay was his meeting with Lee Chan. This made Yon Bell became interested. After all, it could also have been about Yu Ham and his current condition. A stranger interrupted the conversation. He asked in whose role the girl had come to the reception. After all, many people said that she was the partner of the CEO and manager of the company. The stranger emphasized that gossip about John Bell could not convey all her beauty. The girl understood perfectly well that only bad things were gossiped about her, and his words could be taken as a provocation. So she responded with an attack. She asked when anyone could attend the organization's meetings and ceremonial evenings. The man was stunned and didn't know what to say. The guest swung at the girl to hit her. He could not allow a girl of unknown and suspicious origin to scold and humiliate him like that. It was beneath his honor, and he should take revenge. The blow was repelled. The guest began to say that the girl was really crazy, and she, in turn, asked if this was not what was being said in the gossip. He replied that he had not suspected the extent of the truth. Baek Ha was closely following the scene. Vaughn! He certainly wasn't going to get involved in the conflict, but he kept his finger on the pulse of events. He knew his sister would handle it, and there was no need to worry about her at the moment. Angel and Dushuyu approached the girl. Yeon Bell was surprised. She asked what had brought her friend here. He replied that he couldn't just leave her alone at such an important moment. There's definitely more to them than just friendship. They're almost like a family, as they're open and honest with each other, while other families and clans are held together only by hierarchy and discipline. Shu Yu's family could have been a powerful ally for Baekjeon. They have influence and authority among the other families. Yeon thought that he was not given much space in the original plot. Unexpectedly for herself, the girl asked when she and Du first met. He remained silent. It was clear that he didn't really want to talk about it with her, but there was no other way out. The young man's attitude towards this was too serious. He took the jewelry out of the girl's hair and promised that he would return it only when she remembered their acquaintance and the events that preceded it. The boy finally gave in. He told her that at that time she wanted new sensations, but spent all her time in casinos and shops. The girl felt embarrassed about this. For some reason, she felt ashamed, even though she didn't do it. The stranger, who had almost slapped the girl, was going to take revenge on her. A brilliant plan was brewing in his head. He would try to spread dirty gossip about John Belle and degrade her status. The main theme, in his opinion, should have been the possible connection between a brother and sister, whose blood was white and similar. In any case, it is worth showing the girl her place in society. Someone grabbed the offended man and lifted him off the ground. The attacker asked how he had tried to harm the organization and how he dared to say such things about Baekjeon. Punishment would follow. The stranger took out a gun and put it to his mouth. He was going to deal with the scoundrel for his audacity and hypocrisy. In the eyes of the attacker burned madness and a desire for violence. John Bell was relaxing on the terrace when her brother's assistant approached her. She realized that her boss was calling her in. The reason was that her security had received a new status and level of organization. To the conversation, he ordered not to play, but to call a doctor for his sister. She looked bad, and so tonight was over for her. John was even glad about it. He couldn't trust the girl to anyone else. Baek Ha-won took her in his arms and carried her to the car. Everyone present had to see this. The sister resisted, but he convinced her that she couldn't go alone. The next day, John Bell took a long time to convince her brother that she could walk on her own 2 feet. She wanted to get back her hairpin, which Do Shu-yu had taken. Therefore, John Bell came to his house. The boy was happy to meet her. But the girl was even more happy and immediately threw herself into John's arms. The girl clung tightly to her guest. The poor little girl was running away from the guard. He ordered her to stop and stop running. Joan Bell asked what the girl had done that was so terrible. The man replied that she had been wandering around the gallery for 2 days. The guard thanked the lady for catching the girl. Although she was small, she was very fast. Jeo was indignant that they wanted to chase the little girl away without even finding out the reasons for her behavior. And while the man went to find the museum director to report the girl and the arrival of the lady from Baekjeon, Yan asked the girl who she was, how she got here, and why she ran away. The girl said her name was Ivy. John asked her not to be afraid, because they wouldn't do anything bad to her, but on the contrary, they would take her under their care and help her in every way. The little girl told him that her father had disappeared. In the office, Do Shu-yu was waiting for the girl. He was surprised by her appearance. After all, she had never visited his studio and gallery. The girl always considered it a boring and unnecessary thing. The girl demanded that the young man return what he had taken from dinner. He refused, but he clearly couldn't resist her pressure completely. The girl got angry and demanded an explanation. After all, she didn't want to take anything unnecessary. She just needed to find out the truth, whatever it really was. Dushai said that for now, the thing would be his because Wyon hadn't fulfilled her conditions. His attention was drawn to a girl. She was standing behind John. Bell looked closely at Doshi. He asked who this girl was and what she was doing in his premises. In his opinion, the security guards were not fulfilling their duties. John defended the little girl. She explained that no one wanted to help the girl, but simply wanted to drive her out of the gallery. So she had to help and protect her from anything bad that could happen to her. The girl asked Ivy to tell her uncle everything she had told her recently. In that case, the uncle might be able to help her and fix her situation. The girl didn't want to do this at first. Du Shu-yu called his assistant and ordered her to deal with the girl's issue. In his opinion, she would open up more to another girl and would not hide anything, so the maid had to handle it, but she immediately set to work. The girl was silent for a while, just staring intently at John. Belle, who was standing nearby, decided to leave the room with her guardian. Yeon had been thinking about taking over the responsibilities from the beginning. Now she was forced to blame herself for what happened. But Doshi noticed her frustration and promised to personally supervise. But she still didn't give up her idea of returning the hairpin. The young man said that he would agree to this if she would complete one errand. His request was that the girl stay with him until next week. Yeon will also accompany him to the casino, and then Do Shiyu will give her the item and share information about everything the girl was interested in. The offer was very pleasant and interested her. It still remained a mystery why he was taking the girl into the company. The young man explained her mute question by saying that he wanted to show her something interesting, which she would clearly be delighted with. And at the same time, they would remember the past. In addition, their favorite, and at the same time the largest casino in the city, has changed ownership, which means that there will be a specially organized event from the new owner, which will lure guests. John Bell agreed only because Do Shiyu had vaguely hinted that Utopia would be involved in all this. So this was an option for the girl to meet Yu Hem. She preferred not to think about the danger. On the way to her destination, Yan learns that the ignoramus who insulted her at the ceremony and tried to hit her was the previous owner of the casino. But he died at the same banquet. The situation was actually such that the man owed a lot to very serious people. He was killed, although they tried to make it look like it was a suicide. At the end, he supposedly left a letter. John thought that faking suicide was the most common practice for killing important people who had influence and could make a big difference in the lives of others. So it was no pity for the stranger. Meanwhile, the girl thought about how the casino wasn't such an important location in the original plot. It was mentioned involuntarily as a place where Yu Hem made money for the business. And the owner who replaced the deceased was Yu Hua. Only she could make the biggest bet for the largest game in the history of gambling, Utopia, was only its future head. Angel was happy that they would soon be able to get closer to everyone responsible for his sister's murder, which the police and investigators, due to mafia involvement, also described as a suicide. John Bell was so tired from the eventful day that she fell asleep right on the couch. Fatigue left no room for thought. The girl woke up to her brother standing over her. The sister asked Baek Ha-won if he had heard anything about the murder of the man who had insulted her at the reception. The young man replied that his only regret was that he was not the one who took that life. Instead, John was supposed to go to the main office now and prepare for the meeting. The girl asked if she really had to be there, to which she received a positive response, and she should prepare to take responsibility. The girl blocked his way. She asked him to answer sincerely and tell her how honest he was with her. The young man was not surprised by her request. After all, he had treated her badly before. Previously, he was afraid that the girl would harm the organization because she would not become the head. He would not give anyone such power. But now he was increasingly tying her to Peiho-chan. John closer to him. Bell? And the organization was a good excuse for something like that, but it wasn't worth going too far, so he explained that he wanted to give her a part of the family business. But now it's worth waiting. John Bell has not yet fully understood the responsibility and significance. And only after the meeting will the girl understand the full seriousness of her position in the Baekocheon structure. Soon the girl was practicing in a private shooting range near the penthouse. Angel emphasized that if they found out about her plan, the boss would be very unhappy and angry with both of them. John asked how she could avoid being there, since she was not going to dedicate her life to the common cause. The organization did not appeal to her and did not arouse any ambitions. The doctor praised Yan for greatly improving her firearms skills. But something was bothering the girl. She felt that danger was lurking nearby. In the window of the next corridor, she saw a girl who had tried to kill her and set dogs on her while hunting in the forest. John asked if there was really only one exit in the room. The young man began to worry seriously. After all, if the girl was in danger again because of him, the boss would clearly be angry and ready to simply destroy him, so he had to come up with something. The girl replied that it was unlikely that they had come specifically for her. However, it was worth being careful not to spoil anything and not put yourself and the doctor in danger. The sounds of footsteps were heard in the corridor. The girl who led the people from Utopia explained to her subordinates that they would now be looking for the hacker who went by the nickname 44. So they had better make it before Yuham arrived. Yan looked around carefully. The corridor was empty. The people from Utopia had moved on down the corridor. The girl was glad that she could hide her presence so easily. After all, who knew what would happen next? But it was actually a trap. Behind them stood a pink-haired girl, She fired a warning shot so that no one would doubt the seriousness of her intentions. Jan had no doubt about that. The doctor stood up for his ward. He covered her with himself and ordered her to run away. John hesitated. She felt ashamed for all the bad words she had once bestowed on this young man. She asked how he should deal with his partner, to which the doctor replied that he was in control, because a utopian spy simply couldn't act otherwise. And in the meantime, Ioan could call for help. The girl did not hesitate. She rushed headlong into the adjacent corridor, protected by Angel, who blocked the path to the fugitive with his body. The attacker was angry that the victim was running away again. A further plan of action arose by itself in the girl's head. It consisted in calling for help from Una. Your brother's assistant will certainly arrive with help and deal with the attacking enemy. She didn't manage to escape far, because Hem was standing behind her. He grabbed the girl tightly by the waist and held her. The young man talked about how much he missed her while she tried to move away from fear. To all her questions, the boy replied that he simply missed her very much, and he had no other option when he learned about the danger that threatened her. Yuhua sent her assistant to find her. His question about whether the girl had really been dishonest with him was unexpected. This time, it was clear that they had to stop communicating altogether. Otherwise, he will suspect her of something. And at the moment, all she needed was the accusation of treason and working for a competitor. So now, forced, Wyon told what she had said before. She said so in order to survive. To be sure, she took out a gun. Yugeum advised her not to make such movements. After all, he had little faith that the girl would shoot him. Jan asked why he was so sure of this. The poor woman pointed the gun at the young man. He replied that he simply did not believe that she was capable of killing him. To be more certain, he raised the gun to his chest and surrendered himself completely to the girl's will. His last wish is for her to confess her feelings for him again. At this moment, with his death in her hands, he would like her to speak to him openly and honestly. John recalled the time she had saved him from a fire. The young man was surprised to hear this, but the girl emphasized that she had been honest with him at that moment. She had acted from the heart then. That was the end of their conversation. The girl said that she had saved his life for a reason, so that he could brag about it now, and it was worth thinking about her suggestion about getting away. The young man got out just in time. He was in time for Baekjeon's men to arrive. Ji-eun asked the girl where she had disappeared to after her escape. She wasn't going to answer, saying she was tired. In the pet house, the girl met her brother. He was in her room. At first, she thought she had chosen the wrong room. But after coming to her senses a little, she realized that Baek-ha came to visit. But the young man smiled slyly. He asked why every time she left the house, she had to call the entire Baekjeon security service to save her life or get her out of trouble. He added that he would have to leave the office for a few days, so Ji-eun had to keep her in and keep an eye on her. If anything happened to the girl, the heads of the employees would fly. He wouldn't want the future co-owner of Baekjeon to get a bad reputation. After all, even though the girl doesn't want this, she has been part of the group since the very beginning of its existence in the family. Angel found the girl in her room. She was lying on the bed and holding a gun in her hands. The doctor asked where his patient got the gun from. She replied that her brother had given her the gun so that she would be safe. He heard gossip about her training at the shooting range. The doctor was curious about where the girl had disappeared to after she ran away. He guessed that the girl had been seeing Hem, and he was interested in the details. Yeon ordered the boy to return to Utopia and find out what Hem was doing now. This way, he would pay her back for keeping quiet. The doctor didn't want to return because he might be suspected. There was a knock at the door. The girl introduced herself as a service staff member who was in charge of the settlers. She came in with a tray on wheels, for Lady Yan was hungry. Then something happened that no one expected to see right now. Under the wig was Do Shiyu. He pretended to be a servant and entered the girl's room to remind her of their condition and contract. They were going to the casino together soon. The girl asked how they would manage to get out of the office if there were a lot of people around, and they all had orders to guard her. The plan was for Do Shiyu to continue playing the role of the staff girl, and Yeon and the doctor sat under the curtain of the tray with wheels. The plan could cost them their lives if anyone thought to check. The plan worked. Du Shiyu was driving the cart through a room full of people. Angel asked why they were taking such a risk. Did the girl really want to get into that casino? And why had they taken him with them? Everything could have worked out, but G happened along the way. Un? The girl sat on the floor in front of him, like a kitten caught doing something wrong. The guard promised to keep her escape a secret, but John thought it was time to make his position known, so she ordered him to leave with his advice and recommendations. But the man replied that he could not do that. He was appointed as the boss's deputy during his absence, so his orders were as valid as those of Baek Ha-won himself. But Yan asked if her brother really allowed her to be treated like this. Shai Yu came to the rescue in the guise of a maid. He promised the head of security that he would take the girl under his care, and he would take her frightened to her room on his own. Yan was afraid that the trick would not work. Surprisingly, the head guard agreed to the offer. He calmly let them go and left them alone. He even offered to escort the guard, but the young man refused. In the car, all three of them discussed the situation. John was worried about what might be done to them if the truth were revealed. The punishment could be very severe, because it felt like betrayal. Du Shiyu talked to the girl about the previous owner being murdered. The girl wondered who could have agreed to such a bold move. The young man explained that it was he who did it, tearing the scoundrel's mouth open. Yan asked if this was a direct order from her brother. The young man replied that the boss was not aware of what he had planned and implemented. The poor thing was convinced that in this world, a person's life means nothing. The conversation moved from the grand casino game to Ivy's life. Du replied that the girl had been transferred to a special boarding school for girls because she had been silent for a long time and did not want to tell anything. Du Shiyu suggested that they go to the girl's house together next time to visit her. Suddenly, his attention was caught by an object sticking out of the girl's pocket. It was a gun. The young man was surprised. He asked if the girl knew the symbolic meaning of such a gift, and from the head of the organization himself. Now her life was completely in the possession of the Baekjeon organization, and she was its faithful servant. And you can only leave the organization after death, so you shouldn't treat the gift so lightly. Yan replied that she had no intention of staying in Baekjeon until the very end. Du advised her to drop the idea. Belonging to a group did not mean constantly worrying about its affairs. It was worth living your life, but only taking into account the needs and interests of the organization. I warned her to always remember this. Du Shiyu showed a special pass. The girl asked where he got the VIP customer card from. He replied that his good friend gave it to him, so there was no need to worry. John Bell felt uncomfortable here. She felt like she was in enemy territory, where danger was always lurking. Du Shiyu insisted that she not be nervous. Their attention was drawn to a group of people gathered around the boy. He was lying on the floor, blood flowing from his hand. Do explained that he had cheated, and they had decided to punish him for foul play. That is not forgiven. She felt embarrassed because she wanted to believe that it was an ordinary casino. But in fact, people were being mutilated in front of everyone. The doctor was worried about his subordinate. She felt bad in this place. Yeon was even more surprised when she saw the one who was punishing the swindler. It turned out to be Yu-gyum himself. The young man recognized her and looked at her carefully. The girl was uncomfortable and felt out of place. But then Yu-ham turned around and went his own way. He didn't want to stay in the company of a traitor, and a girl who had dumped him several times in a row. Yeon and her friends watched closely after him. Yu-ham became the new owner of the casino, but what was his crazy, crazy sister doing in that case? Why did he deal with that criminal so bloody, and why did he do it himself? Him again. She felt sorry for him. Because it was her fault that he could become so cruel. Do-shi insisted that they should come to a secret dinner that the casino owner was organizing, especially for the most distinguished guests. The young man emphasized that he would call her his lover. Yu-gyum surprisingly started to play a role and pretended not to know the girl. She mentally thanked him for his concern, since it was not right to reveal her identity in this place, and decided to play along. The conversation at the table was mainly about business and business matters, so the girl decided to sit her down in the restroom. John Bell thought about how tired she was actually. The best option now was to leave this place and get away. It was clear that the public was hostile towards representatives of other clans who did not show any affection for Utopia. Someone nearby was talking about John Bell. One of the participants in the conversation emphasized that the girl is very similar to the girl who remained alive after the death of the former manager Bection. At that time, everyone believed that the girl's parents had died in a car accident, but in reality, it was all staged, like an accident. The murder was ordered, but who ordered it remained a mystery. The appearance of Yu Hem tore her away from eavesdropping on the conversation. The girl asked what brought the young man to her house. He assured her that he missed her, and Jan Bell asked if he had forgotten about her when he became the owner of the casino. The young man said that he was very greedy for her, so he was not going to share her with anyone. He also added that he would not leave her alone for long again and would be responsible for her and her safety. Du Shiyu called out to her loudly. He couldn't leave the girl alone, knowing what was happening around her. Danger could be lurking anywhere. The girl felt embarrassed by his behavior. The young man intervened in the conversation. He skillfully showed his acting skills, declaring that he had begun to worry about his beloved. Yu Gem found it hard to believe that Yon had made such a rash choice. John Bell had a fight with Do Shiyu. She asked him why he was acting so strangely. He emphasized that he had actually helped her a lot because he had saved her from unpleasant company, and she was no longer forced to do things she didn't want to do. Finally, the girl was truly alone and could breathe fully. The conversation in the restroom was disturbing. It was obvious that someone was spreading gossip on purpose, knowing about the real killer. Again, her peace was disturbed. This time it was Li Chan. The original story was telling the truth when it described him after drinking alcohol. The young man was acting disgustingly. He was inadequate. John Bell didn't dare leave him alone. After all, the young man was inadequate. He didn't know how to drink alcohol at all. And when he did drink it, he turned into a very vile creature. The guy replied that she was actually right. He would like to drink alcohol and not be under its influence at all, like Yu Gum does. These words made Yan suspect something about her favorite's behavior. The girl recalled the events of that evening when a supposedly drunk Yu Gum came to her room. Li Chan continued to say that he never suffered from alcohol and its effects on the body. The girl decided to take advantage of Li Chan in this state. She asked him what he could tell her about Yu Hem's childhood, but the boy said that he couldn't say anything because he had met him already as an adult. The only thing he told me was about Yu Hem's strange habit of going to the same place. This place was an old, abandoned house in one of the abandoned areas of the city. The young man often goes there. It is clear that there were reasons for this. After all, even in the pouring rain, the young man stood there for hours, refusing to go under an umbrella. Before coming to Utopia, something had happened to him. Yan asked if the young man knew what had really happened to him, but Li Chan remained silent. He either knew and was hiding it, or he couldn't tell her anything about it. Suddenly, he asked who she was to Yu Gum. After all, Li and Yu Hem's secret was a plan to completely destroy Utopia. Nothing should remain of it, but the appearance of Yan stands in the way. Belle? No. She has changed his companion and has a strong influence on him. The girl replied that she really just appreciated him and was concerned about his condition. It seemed like she was doing everything as she should, but everything around her was turning into a nightmare. Yu Ham found the girl who had fallen asleep tiredly next to Li Chan. He dialed Do Shiyu to warn him about the girl's location, but he asked to send her to the room because he was busy. There was no other option. Yu Gem personally carried her to the room. He was pleased to do it. After all, even the slightest contact with the girl's body gave him maximum pleasure. John Bell woke up just as Yu Ham was about to leave the room. She didn't protest, having guessed what had really happened. The girl pretended to think it was all a dream. The young man didn't argue with her. He didn't want to spoil the moment and miss out on the pleasure. So he just wished her all the best and was going to get out of here before the deception was revealed. Sha Yu and the doctor were standing next to her bed. The girl asked how they ended up here, but the guys were the first to assure her that she had fallen asleep on the balcony. The last thing the girl could remember was her conversation with Li Chan. After that, everything went blurry. Yan admitted that she had been drinking alcohol, which made her feel strange, and she turned off in the middle of the conversation. In the morning, The girl found a business card on her desk. It seemed strange to her. Besides, she couldn't remember when she had picked it up or how she had left it there. But she didn't want to think about it right now. Shiyu entered the room. He said that it was time to wake up and do his business. In his opinion, the girl should have gotten some sleep by now, as she had slept for 2 days. That shouldn't have been enough time. It was time to go for a walk and finally get some fresh air. John didn't really want to do that. But under the pressure of the young man, she had to give in. She didn't like the place. However, it was time to talk to Du, because he had promised to partially fulfill his promise to share information. But the boy said that he was not going to do what they had talked about. The girl was surprised. She was angry with him. However, it so happened that the young man offered a new deal. The young man emphasized that he did not want to go out with Angel. In addition, he closed himself in his room and did not want to receive anyone. This was a signal for John Bell. She wanted to see a doctor. He didn't open the door right away, but he was very happy when he saw a girl on the doorstep who had also prepared his favorite porridge for him and wanted to share it with him. She added that she immediately ran to him. Jan asked if he needed the help of a qualified doctor. The girl touched his forehead and diagnosed that he had a high fever. It was necessary to treat him. The boy's behavior changed quickly. He ordered the girl to get away from him and not to bother him anymore. But this did not make any impression on the girl. After all, she was not going to give up. After he tasted the porridge specially prepared for him, the boy changed. He became cheerful. The young man said that no one had prepared food specially for him for a long time. He also apologized for his aggressiveness. John Bell thought it was the first time she had seen him smile. And he suggested that she have dinner with him, because he would order food and they would have a nice time together. To which John replied that she would think about it. Yugeum and Lee Chan were talking. Their conversation was about what they could offer to Baekjeon's boss and how they could harm Utopia as much as possible. The casino was the first step towards that. Sina joined in the conversation. Lee Chan didn't want her to become an accomplice in their case, as it would put her at risk, so he insisted that they get out of here as quickly as possible. A meeting took place between Yu Gyum and Do Shiyu. The young men discussed whether they should trust each other if their business agreement did not clearly outline the issue of mutual giving and receiving from their partner. Then the conversation moved on to Baekjeon. Both agreed that in this game, it was worth placing bets on this organization, and as a result, receive additional bonuses from them, improving their situation. Yuhua and Kang, in turn, talked about how they should move on to implementing their evil intention as soon as possible. The girl was furious. She wanted the boy to die as soon as possible. Her life had been going wrong ever since her father brought a little boy into the house, whom he proclaimed his heir, because it was not right for a girl, even her own daughter, to become the head. Many people understood that Yu Gyum and his father were not blood relatives, but tradition is sacred and inviolable. In her childhood, she could get rid of the annoying boyfriend many times, but she had to endure his presence all her life. All this time, Yugam had spoiled her existence and made her nervous. Finally, the moment came when determination prevailed over doubts and vain hopes. The reason for this was the appearance of the young man at the birthday party of the said sister. Then he attracted the attention of all the guests to himself, leaving the girl behind. She did not even want to see him after that. It was now time for him to die and suffer the punishment he deserved. Their hacker joined them. He paid no attention to those present, even though they were considered senior in status and position. The young man emphasized that he had found information about who killed the previous owner of the casino. And this was where John was implicated. Belle and the Baekjeon organization, her brother. The next day the girl visited the swimming pools. Angel was there. The young man was very happy that he had become the object of attention of such a beauty, and John Bell took full advantage of this. The boy and girl were lying under umbrellas. The doctor was dressed in a formal suit, which made him look a bit comical. Something was strangely disturbing him. The feeling was like what he had felt at the shooting range. The doctor ordered her to hide, and he would personally deal with what was happening. Yan hoped that nothing bad would happen, but she would have to be safe. Yuhua just doesn't give up. Right in the corridor, the girl came across Khan. The young man asked where she was in such a hurry. The girl didn't know what to say to that. She didn't want to talk to him, but there was nowhere to retreat. The girl looked at the killer in surprise. He asked her to remain calm, and in that case, no one would get hurt. Yawn. Belle wasn't going to risk someone else's life, but she would escape the premises at the slightest opportunity. Gun appeared in front of her. He covered the girl with his body and ordered her to run away. Kyung wondered where all these people came from when he had the slightest opportunity to deal with the victim. John Bell ran quickly down the corridor. She wondered if she would be able to reach her room before the other enemies noticed her. If she didn't, she would be taken prisoner again. The decision was to hide in the pool. The people of Utopia were passing by, and no one guessed that their target was now in the water. The search continued, but to no avail for the enemy. Yan held on with all her strength under the water. She understood that her rivals could return any moment and she would be in their power again. The girl was running out of air. Her lungs were burning with fire when someone grabbed her tightly with a hand and pulled her up. She could only guess who had actually pulled her out. Her strength was leaving her. She could no longer resist. In front of the girl stood Engdel. The young man was looking at her carefully and seemed to be about to say something to her. Yan asked how he had gotten here and why the guards had let him through, and the people of Utopia had not come across him. Angel leaned over to the girl and told her who had really killed his younger sister. It was Baek Ha Von. The girl refused to believe it. She became scared that this person was constantly around. The Baekjeon family became clear. This idea had been pursued by the young man from the very beginning. Kang, who had come me as if from nowhere, came to him and called him 44th. Yan realized that the doctor was actually the hacker that Li Chan and her brother's security chief had been talking about. He had been around all this time, skillfully hiding his identity from everyone. The doctor took her in his arms and carried her in an unknown direction. Kang praised the young man for having coped with the task. The boss will be happy to hear good news. The time for revenge has come, and nothing will stop them. The girl was sleeping in the room. Next to her stood a former doctor who turned out to be a double agent. He was watching her closely and diligently, trying to catch the slightest changes in the poor girl's facial expressions. Kang read his partner's thoughts. That's why he wanted the girl to end her life as soon as possible. After all, over time he was getting more and more used to her and trying not to think about the end of this story. The time to act had come. Angel put on his cap and asked his partner to tell the girl everything when she woke up. He knew perfectly well that the first thing the girl would think about would be revenge. John Bell fell asleep shortly after 44 had gone about his business. She got out of bed and walked around the room. The girl was glad to be able to move. The scenery from the window reminded her of the one she had seen in a casino. Kang entered the room. He asked if the girl wanted him to keep her company. The boy asked her to go back to bed, as it was still night. Yan wondered if he was afraid of her. The captive thought the killer would torture her to get information that could be used against Baekjeon and Utopia. But she decided to beat him to it. She asked what he would do to her. The mercenary said that he would use her as a tool to get what he wanted from Yu Hem. So she is not in any danger personally. Except for the crazy Yu Hua. Yan asked what they were going to do with Yu Gum. Kang laughed and moved closer to her. She guessed that events would develop as they did in the original work. Yu Gum could die. Kang said that if the princess did not want to be killed for her, she should not have left the house at all. Only then would the girl break this vicious cycle of death and destruction. The girl asked why he was doing all this if he wasn't going to get any reward for it. The guy said he was just having fun and didn't want any money for it. Kang grabbed her tightly by the throat. He was hit in the head from behind. Yu Hua was standing over the guy. She said that Kang was losing control of himself and the situation in general, so she neutralized him because she asked him to protect the captive. The 44th joined the company. He reminded them that the slightest damage or wound would reduce their value, and this would become a powerful obstacle to their plan. John Bell, with her last strength, jumped to her feet and grabbed Angel by the collar. The girl asked what he was up to and why he was trying to get revenge on the guilty through her. To which he simply remained silent. The guy simply suggested that John take the medicine he asked for and return to his normal state. The girl felt uncomfortable. She didn't feel safe, but at least they weren't going to do anything bad to her. Angel ordered his accomplices to leave the room, as he had to examine the captive without clothes. Yuhua asked why he had to do that. The young man was not confused, but simply ordered them to leave the room. The boy confessed to everything he had done to get his accomplices to her. All the coincidences were actually arranged by him on purpose. So Yan looked at him in disappointment. Her last wish was to find out if her brother was really as scoundrel as everyone around him said. The young man considered the correct answer to be simply to remain silent and not to give any more reasons for unnecessary conversations. At this time in the hospital, Ji-eun spoke to Do Shiyu. Do told him about the security chief being found unconscious by the pool. His phone was nearby. The surveillance cameras showed nothing. Ji was going to go and solve his problems. He didn't care what would happen to him. Duty and responsibility pushed him to take decisive action. Du Shi tried to stop him. Bayek Ha, he was talking to his assistant. He was convinced that he had the situation with his sister under control, and that the girl was under reliable protection, and he would arrive at the residence soon. Do Shi was on the phone. The caller reported that the girl had disappeared. The agents could not find her trace, even after several hours of searching. It is hard to imagine Baek Ha-won's anger. Yu Hem got a call. It was Jang Yu-bel. The girl asked him to be vigilant and careful. After all, he was in danger. Fortunately, an assistant came to him. He shared his suspicions with him. The assistant emphasized that Taiji was seen in the building, Kana. It could mean many things, but it was always dangerous to be with him. He could never feel normal around a mercenary. In the corridor, they came across Baek Ha-won. He was standing among the dead bodies of people from Utopia. Lee Chan asked his boss to continue the search for the girl peacefully. After all, he and Baek Jong now have a common goal. The tone in which Paik asked about his sister's whereabouts left no doubt as to who he believed was responsible for the kidnapping. Yu Gum didn't even think of trying to explain anything to him. John Bell, meanwhile, was sitting on the bed, thinking about what she should do next. Khan came into the room and offered her something to eat, as she hadn't eaten anything since yesterday. The girl's response was cold. The mercenary's phone rang. After the conversation, Wyon realized that it was Yu Gem. The killer's mood improved. He finally got a chance to reach the head of Utopia and arranged a meeting with him at a nearby cafe. While Kang waited for Yu Hem, he remembered how he had become who he was at the moment. His first victim was a kitten. Later, he was interested in larger and more massive victims. He liked the way they suffered. When his father found out about his strange preferences, he called him a psychopath and disowned him. He didn't want to have such a son. He didn't have to think about becoming an heir. It was then that he met Yu Hem. Both found themselves over the edge of fate. There was no need to think about anything good in their case. Both had to work on their careers and choose their own path. Now he pretended to be happy to meet his friend. Without preamble, Yu Gum began to talk about how they wouldn't be communicating for long. He was curious about where the girl was and how he could get her back. Kang was angry. He wondered if the boy would be happy if he found a girl. If so, he definitely wouldn't get her. After all, his stubbornness and position had angered and made him jealous all his life. Kang's desire had long been to break the young man, to show him another side of life. And now he would make every effort to do so. It was hard for him to admit that with Yu Hem it was almost impossible. John Bell thought that the end of the story would be the same as in the original. All her efforts would be in vain, and her actions would still lead to the death of everyone she valued and loved, in one way or another. While searching for options on how to leave the room, the girl came across a sheet of paper with the biography of Angel's younger sister on it. The girl seemed very familiar visually. The boy suddenly appeared behind him and snatched the letter from the girl's hands. He ordered her not to touch it and not to meddle in matters that did not concern John personally. Belle? The girl suspected deception and trickery. Jan guessed that the girl was actually her mother's murderer. That time, the head of Baekjeon, accompanied by a government official, got into a fatal car accident. The investigation turned up nothing. The killer disappeared without a trace. It is likely that it was the same girl, Angela's sister. The guy rejected reality in every way, but the facts were against him. Sympathy will change nothing, but the truth will solve a lot.